The starship Enterprise D glided through the Epsilon sector on a routine stellar cartography mission when Lieutenant Worf's tactical console erupted in urgent cascades of amber light. Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair, tugging his uniform tunic with practiced precision as he moved toward the Klingon security chief. "Report, Mr. Worf." "Captain, sensors detect a subspace distortion at bearing 27 Mark III. The anomaly is generating massive energy readings comparable to a warp core breach, but the signature is unlike anything in our database." Worf's brow ridges furrowed deeper. "There is also a distress signal, sir. Audio only. The universal translator cannot identify the language." Picard exchanged a glance with Commander William Riker, who had moved to stand beside him. "On screen, Mr. Worf, and let's hear that signal." The view screen shimmered, revealing a churning vortex of blue and crimson energy, space itself seeming to tear at its edges. Then the bridge speakers crackled with a voice, deep, resonant, mechanical, yet unmistakably conveying urgency and nobility even through the alien syllables. Data's fingers danced across his ops console with android precision. "Fascinating, Captain. The linguistic structure suggests a constructed language with mathematical foundations. The transmission is repeating on multiple frequencies, and I am detecting quantum-level distortions consistent with interdimensional breach." "Interdimensional?" Picard's voice carried both scientific curiosity and tactical concern. "Is the anomaly stable?" "Negative, sir," Data replied. "The rift is collapsing. At current rate of decay, it will close completely in 4 minutes, 17 seconds. The distress call continued, that commanding voice now clearly urgent, even without translation. Picard made his decision with the certainty of a Starfleet captain who understood that exploration meant reaching towards the unknown, not retreating from it. "Mr. Crusher, set course for the anomaly. Full impulse. Yellow alert. Mr. Worf, shields up. Whatever is transmitting that signal is trying to reach our universe. Let's show them the Federation responds to those in need." The Enterprise surged forward, and as they approached, sensors revealed something emerging from the collapsing rift. Metallic, massive, and moving under its own power, through the void of space. The object was roughly 20 meters tall, its form angular and purposeful, constructed of red, blue, and silver metals that gleamed even in the distant starlight. "My God," Riker breathed. Data's golden eyes widened fractionally, the android equivalent of profound surprise. "Captain, I am reading a coherent energy matrix within the metallic structure. It is not a vessel. It is a life form." The figure that emerged fully from the dying rift was undeniably mechanical, yet moved with organic grace and deliberate purpose. As the subspace tear sealed behind it with a flash of exotic radiation, the being oriented itself toward the Enterprise. Its optical sensors, for they could be nothing else, glowed with bright blue light. "Open hailing frequencies," Picard commanded quietly. "Frequencies open, sir." Picard stepped forward, as he had done countless times before, when humanity reached across the vast darkness to touch another consciousness. "This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. You have entered United Federation of Planets space. We received your distress signal and are prepared to render assistance." For a moment, only the soft, ambient sounds of the bridge filled the silence. Then the universal translator engaged with a melodic chime, and that commanding voice spoke in standard. "I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots. I thank you for responding, Captain Picard. The space bridge that brought me here was damaged in combat with the Decepticons. I did not intend to cross into your dimension, but I am grateful to have found those who answer calls for help." There was a pause, and something in that mechanical voice conveyed profound weariness. "I have been fighting for millions of years, Captain. Perhaps your universe might teach me what peace looks like." Counselor Deanna Troi leaned forward slightly in her seat, her empathic senses reaching toward this impossible visitor. "Captain," she said softly, "I'm sensing something extraordinary. He's mechanical, but I feel emotions, nobility, exhaustion, hope. He has a presence, a consciousness as real as yours or mine." Data's fingers continued their analysis. "Captain, preliminary scans confirm Counselor Troy's assessment. The energy matrix I detected appears to be analogous to a neural network, but far more complex. This being possesses what may be true artificial consciousness, comparable to my own positronic net, but based on entirely different principles." Picard felt the weight of this moment settle over him. Throughout his career, he had encountered countless life forms. Silicon-based energy beings, collective consciousnesses, even Data himself. But this was something unprecedented. A mechanical warrior from another universe entirely, seeking refuge and perhaps redemption in Federation space. The philosophical implications alone were staggering. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below, to boldly go where no one has gone before. "Mr. Prime," Picard said, choosing to address their visitor with the respect due to another captain, another leader who bore the weight of command. "You are clearly in need of assistance, and your technology is remarkable. With your permission, we would like to bring you aboard the Enterprise. Our chief engineer and science officers can examine the damage to your systems, and we can discuss your situation in more appropriate surroundings than the void of space." "Your generosity honors me, Captain Picard." Even through the mechanical timbre, Optimus Prime's voice carried warmth. "However, my size may present difficulties. I stand approximately 9 meters in height in my current configuration. I would not wish to cause damage to your vessel." Riker grinned slightly. "We have cargo bays that can accommodate you, Mr. Prime. And something tells me you'll find our ship's android officer very interested in meeting you." Data tilted his head with characteristic curiosity. "Indeed, the opportunity to interface with a mechanical consciousness from another universe is unprecedented. I have many questions." "As do I, Commander." Prime's voice held a note of gentle inquiry. "Data, sir. Lieutenant Commander Data." "Data." Prime seemed to consider this. A name that speaks to information and purpose. "In my universe, we believe that freedom is the right of all sentient beings. I look forward to discussing the nature of consciousness with you, Commander." Picard smiled faintly. Somehow, he suspected that this encounter would prove to be far more than a simple first contact scenario. This Optimus Prime was a warrior, yes. But he was also a philosopher. And if his millions of years of experience could find common ground with the Federation's vision of peaceful coexistence and infinite diversity, perhaps both their peoples could learn something profound. "Prepare to beam our guest directly to Cargo Bay 3, Picard ordered. "And Mr. Data, please join Mr. Prime there with a full science team. Let's find out what brings a warrior philosopher from another universe to our doorstep, and what we can do to help him." As the transporter engaged and Optimus Prime's massive form shimmered into a cascade of molecular energy, Picard found himself thinking of something his old archaeology professor had once said. "The most important discoveries are the ones that make us question what we thought we knew about life itself. Today, the Enterprise had discovered that consciousness, nobility, and the yearning for peace could exist in forms humanity had never imagined. And in a universe where an android named Data served with distinction on the flagship of the Federation, perhaps a mechanical warrior from Cybertron would find that he was not so different after all. Cargo Bay 3 had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate their unusual guest. Picard entered through the primary access corridor, accompanied by Commander Riker, Lieutenant Commander Data, and Counselor Troy. Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge was already present, his visor scanning the towering figure that stood in the center of the bay with quiet dignity. Optimus Prime was even more impressive in person than he had appeared on the view screen. His frame was constructed of impossibly sophisticated metals, each plate and servo interlocking with precision that spoke to engineering principles far beyond Federation understanding. The matrix of leadership gleamed at his chest, a crystalline artifact that pulsed with soft golden light. His optical sensors tracked the approaching officers with what could only be described as intelligent curiosity. "Captain Picard?" Prime's voice resonated through the bay, somehow both powerful and restrained. "Thank you for your hospitality. I have not experienced such welcome in a long time." Picard stepped forward, craning his neck to meet those luminous blue optics. "Mr. Prime, allow me to introduce my senior staff. You've already spoken with Commander Data. This is my first officer, Commander William Riker, our ship's counselor, Commander Deanna Troy, and our chief engineer, Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge." Prime inclined his head in a gesture that transcended cultural boundaries. "I am honored. In my universe, I lead the Autobots, sentient robotic beings from the planet Cybertron. We have been at war with the Decepticons for millions of your years, fighting to preserve freedom and protect innocent life throughout the galaxy. Millions of years." Riker's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a conflict." "War is never quick, Commander, especially when both sides refuse to surrender their principles." Prime's voice carried profound sadness. "The Decepticons seek domination and tyranny. We fight for autonomy and peace. But I fear we have fought for so long that some of my soldiers no longer remember what peace looks like." Troy moved closer, her empathic abilities focused intently on the Autobot leader. "Captain, I'm receiving clearer impressions now. His emotional resonance is remarkably similar to organic sentience. I sense deep compassion, unwavering integrity, but also profound loneliness and doubt. He carries the weight of countless lives lost." "Your abilities are impressive, Counselor," Prime observed. "Among my people, few possess such gifts. To sense emotion in a mechanical frame, you have my respect." Data had been circling Prime slowly, his tricorder emitting soft chirps and beeps. "Fascinating. Mr. Prime, your construction utilizes principles that superficially resemble Earth robotics, but the sophistication is extraordinary. Your joints employ what appears to be quantum-locked molecular lattices for load bearing. Your power source reads as a stable exotic matter-antimatter matrix. What did you call it? Energon?" "Correct, Commander Data. Energon is the lifeblood of all Cybertronians. It fuels our bodies and sustains our sparks." "Sparks?" Data's head tilted with characteristic curiosity. Prime placed one massive hand over the matrix at his chest. "The spark is our essence, our soul, if you will. It is what makes us more than mere machines. It is consciousness, individuality, life itself. When a Cybertronian spark is extinguished, they die, just as an organic being dies when their life force ends." Data's golden eyes seemed to brighten. a quantum consciousness matrix sustained by exotic energy. Mr. Prime, I believe we have more in common than either of us realized. I possess a positronic brain, an artificial neural network that generates consciousness through quantum computational processes. I too have often pondered the nature of the soul and whether a mechanical being can truly possess one. For the first time since entering Federation space, something like warmth entered Optimus Prime's voice. Then we are brothers, Commander Data. Different origins, perhaps, but united in the question that defines us. What does it mean to be alive? Geordi stepped forward, his visor completing its detailed scan. Mr. Prime, I've been analyzing your structural integrity. The good news is that your primary systems are functioning at full capacity. The bad news is that whatever brought you through that dimensional rift caused some damage to your spatial navigation systems. Without them, you won't be able to orient yourself if you need to leave this universe. Can your technology repair the damage? Prime asked. Honestly, I don't know yet. Your technology is incredibly advanced in some ways. That transformation capability you mentioned is something we've never seen at this scale. But in other ways, it's just different. Our approaches to engineering evolved along completely separate paths. Geordi's excitement was evident in his voice. I'd love the opportunity to study your systems, with your permission, of course. Maybe together we can find a way to get you home. You have my permission, Commander LaForge. But I must be honest with you all. I am uncertain whether I wish to return immediately. Prime's gaze swept across the assembled officers. The war on Cybertron has raged for so long that our world is a wasteland. We fight not for territory or resources anymore, but for the principle itself. The right of all sentient beings to determine their own fate. But wars of principle can become as endless as wars of conquest. Picard recognized the philosophical exhaustion in Prime's words. He had seen it before in soldiers who had fought too long, seen too much. Mr. Prime, the Federation was founded on principles similar to yours. We believe in the rights of all sentient species to self-determination, to freedom, to peace. We have not always lived up to those ideals, but we strive toward them. Perhaps while Commander LaForge works on your navigation systems, you might learn something of how we pursue peace in this universe. I would welcome that, Captain. Though I must ask, you accept Commander Data as a full member of your crew? In my experience, organic beings often struggle to see mechanical life as truly sentient. Data spoke before Picard could respond. My status as a sentient being was legally recognized by a Federation tribunal, Mr. Prime. It was a difficult process. Many argued that I was merely property, a sophisticated computer, but nothing more. Captain Picard defended my right to choose my own path, to refuse orders, to be recognized as a person rather than a thing. Prime's optical sensors focused on Picard with new intensity. You fought for him? For his freedom? I did what any decent person would do, Picard replied simply. I recognized consciousness when I saw it. Data is not a tool or a possession. He is an individual with rights, dignity, and infinite potential. To deny that would be to deny everything the Federation stands for. For a long moment, Optimus Prime was silent. Then he knelt on one massive knee, bringing his face closer to Picard's level. The gesture was one of respect, perhaps even reverence. Captain Picard, I have led the Autobots for millions of years. I have seen countless worlds, fought endless battles, made impossible decisions. But never, in all that time, have I encountered an organic being who so instinctively understood what I have always believed, that consciousness itself, regardless of its form, demands recognition and respect. Your Federation may be young compared to Cybertron, but you have achieved something we have not. You have built peace. Riker cleared his throat. Well, we've built an attempt at peace. It's not perfect. We still have conflicts with other powers, the Romulans, the Cardassians, and others. And there are complications that challenge our principles regularly. Principles that are never challenged are not truly held, Prime observed, rising to his full height once more. They are merely comfortable assumptions. Tell me, Captain, your Federation has something called the Prime Directive, does it not? Your computer briefed me during transport. A prohibition against interfering in the development of less advanced civilizations. Picard felt a familiar tension settle in his shoulders. The Prime Directive was the bedrock of Federation policy, but also its greatest source of ethical complexity. That is correct. We believe that every civilization has the right to develop naturally, without outside interference. Even when we have the power to help, we often must refrain to preserve their autonomy and natural growth. And when they cry out for help, when you watch them suffer, die, enslave each other, and you have the power to stop it? Prime's voice was gentle, but the question cut to the heart of Federation philosophy. What then, Captain? Then we face impossible choices, Picard admitted. Choices that haunt us regardless of what we decide. Prime nodded slowly. I understand such choices well. The burden of leadership is knowing that whatever you decide, someone will suffer for it. The only solace is ensuring that your choices serve something greater than yourself. Data had been observing this exchange with rapt attention. Mr. Prime, I am curious about your decision-making processes. You speak of leadership, ethics, and impossible choices. But you are a mechanical being. How do you process moral dilemmas? Do you follow programmed algorithms, or do you possess true, autonomous, ethical reasoning? Commander Data, I will answer your question with one of my own. When you face an ethical dilemma, do you calculate probabilities and outcomes, or do you feel the weight of right and wrong? Data considered this carefully. I process information about probable outcomes. I reference my ethical subroutines. But I've often wondered if what I experience is truly moral reasoning or merely sophisticated programming. Captain Picard and my other crewmates insist that my choices demonstrate true ethical understanding, but I myself remain uncertain. Then we share that uncertainty, my friend, Prime said warmly. I was created by the Primes, the ancient leaders of Cybertron, with certain core directives and values. But in millions of years, I have evolved beyond my original programming. I have learned, adapted, questioned my own assumptions. I have felt joy at protecting the innocent and grief at losing my soldiers. I have doubted myself, questioned whether I am leading my people toward peace or simply perpetuating an endless cycle of violence. Prime's hand touched the matrix at his chest again. This artifact contains the accumulated wisdom of the Primes who came before me. Sometimes I can hear their guidance, their warnings, their hopes. But ultimately, every decision I make is mine alone. If that is not consciousness, Commander Data, then I do not know what is. Troy smiled softly. Mr. Prime, I can assure you that what I sense from you is far more than programming. You possess genuine emotional depth, self-awareness, and moral complexity. In every way that matters, you are as alive as anyone on this ship. Geordi had been making notes on his pad throughout this conversation. Mr. Prime, I hate to interrupt the philosophical discussion, but I need to ask some technical questions. You mentioned you can transform, change your configuration. Could you demonstrate that? Of course, Commander. Prime's body began to shift. Plates rotated, limbs reconfigured, and in a sequence of movements that seemed to defy physics while simultaneously following its own internal logic, the 9-meter robot transformed into a massive semi-truck. Cab and trailer combined, decorated in the same red, blue, and silver colors. The entire transformation took perhaps 5 seconds and produced a sound like 1,000 precision mechanisms working in perfect harmony. Geordi's jaw dropped. That's impossible. The mass distribution, the mechanical stress, the energy requirements. You just reorganized billions of molecular bonds in seconds without generating enough heat to vaporize this cargo bay. The truck shimmered, and Optimus Prime returned to his robot form. Transformation is fundamental to Cybertronian existence, Commander LaForge. It allows us to adapt to different situations, to be more than one thing. It is, in a sense, the physical expression of our belief that identity is not fixed but fluid, that we can be warriors and peacemakers, soldiers and philosophers, mechanical and yet truly alive. Data's eyes widened fractionally. Mr. Prime, that is a beautiful metaphor, and one that resonates with my own experience. I am a machine, but I am also a Starfleet officer. I am artificial, but I am also a person. Identity is indeed more complex than simple categorization. Picard felt a profound satisfaction settling over him. This first contact was already exceeding his expectations. Optimus Prime was not merely a curiosity or a refugee. He was a kindred spirit, a being whose philosophical journey paralleled the Federation's own struggle to define the boundaries of consciousness, rights, and dignity. Mr. Prime, Picard said, I believe you will find much in common with the Federation, and I suspect that we have much to learn from you as well. Commander LaForge, please work with Mr. Prime on repairing his navigation systems. Commander Data, I want you to continue this dialogue. Learn what you can about Cybertronian culture and technology. Aye, Captain, both officers replied. And Mr. Prime, Picard continued, once you are settled, I would be honored if you would join me in my ready room. I suspect we have much to discuss about leadership, ethics, and the burden of command. I would be honored, Captain Picard. Prime placed one hand over his chest in what was clearly a gesture of respect. Till all are one. That is the motto of the Primes. It means that all sentient beings are connected, that our fates are intertwined, that freedom for one requires freedom for all. I believe your Federation understands this truth. Picard smiled. We call it infinite diversity in infinite combinations, Mr. Prime. But I think we're talking about the same thing. As Picard and his senior staff filed out of the cargo bay, leaving Geordi and Data to work with their extraordinary guest, he reflected on the profound nature of this encounter. The Federation had met countless species, but never one quite like Optimus Prime. A mechanical being who embodied both the warrior's strength and the philosopher's wisdom, who had fought for millions of years, yet still believed in peace. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice warned him that if beings like the Borg ever learned of Cybertronian technology, the consequences could reshape the galaxy. But that was a concern for another time. For now, the Enterprise had made first contact with a new form of life. And in that moment, the Federation's mission of peaceful exploration had achieved something remarkable once again. Commander Data stood beside Optimus Prime in the cargo bay that had become the Autobot leader's temporary quarters. his positronic brain processing streams of information faster than any organic mind could comprehend. Before them, a holographic display projected by the Enterprise's systems showed molecular diagrams of Cybertronian technology alongside Federation equivalents. Your power conversion efficiency exceeds our theoretical maximums by a factor of 12, Data observed, highlighting a section of Prime's energon circulation system. The exotic matter you call energon appears to exist in a state of quantum superposition, allowing it to function as fuel, lubricant, computational medium, and cellular repair mechanism simultaneously. It is remarkable. Prime shifted his weight, servos whirring softly. Energon is the foundation of our civilization, Commander Data. Without it, we are lifeless shells. The war on Cybertron is, at its heart, a war over energon resources and the freedom to choose how those resources are used. Fascinating. In the Federation, we solved resource scarcity through replicator technology, matter-energy conversion systems that can produce nearly anything from raw energy. Scarcity no longer drives our economy or politics. Data paused, tilting his head. Does scarcity drive your conflict, or is it philosophical? It began as both, Prime admitted. But it has become primarily philosophical. Megatron, the Decepticon leader, believes that strength grants the right to rule, that the weak exist to serve the strong. I believe that freedom is the right of all sentient beings, that strength should protect, not dominate. We are not fighting over energon anymore, Commander. We are fighting over the soul of our species. Data was silent for a moment, processing this. I understand philosophical conflict in abstract terms, but I confess I struggle to comprehend warfare that spans millions of years. The longest continuous conflict in Federation history lasted only decades. How does one maintain purpose and morale across such timescales? Prime's optical sensors dimmed slightly. A gesture Data was beginning to recognize as sadness. You endure, Commander Data. You remember why you started fighting. You honor the fallen by continuing their mission. You tell yourself that the next battle will be the last, that peace is just over the horizon. He paused. And sometimes you forget what peace feels like. You become so accustomed to war that you no longer know how to exist without it. Is that why you expressed interest in learning about Federation peace-building practices? Data asked gently. Yes. I need to know that peace is possible, Data. That there is a future beyond war. Because if there is not... Prime's voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Data felt something stirring in his positronic net. Something his emotion chip might have identified as compassion, though the chip was currently inactive. Mr. Prime, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you dream? Prime's head turned sharply toward Data, surprise evident in the movement. That is an unexpected question. Why do you ask? I do not dream naturally, Data explained. But Captain Picard once told me that the ability to dream is a fundamental aspect of consciousness. The mind processing experiences, desires, fears in symbolic form. I have created a dream program to simulate the experience, but I am uncertain whether my simulations constitute true dreaming. I wondered whether a mechanical consciousness like yours experiences such phenomena. Prime was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that transcended his mechanical nature. I do dream, Commander Data. I dream of Cybertron as it was before the war. Beautiful, thriving, alive with millions of sparks burning bright. I dream of soldiers I could not save, battles I might have fought differently. And sometimes, he paused, Sometimes I dream of peace, a peace so profound that I wake confused, unable to remember where I am or why I'm holding a weapon. Those dreams cause you distress? Data inquired. They cause me hope, Commander. And hope can be more frightening than fear, because hope demands that you believe things can change. Prime's hand touched the matrix at his chest. This artifact contains the memories and wisdom of all the primes who came before me. Sometimes, when I interface with it, I experience their dreams, their hopes, their regrets. It is a burden and a gift. Data moved closer to the holographic display, calling up new information. Mr. Prime, I have been analyzing the energy signature of your matrix. It reads as a quantum storage device of extraordinary sophistication. But there is something else. A resonance pattern that suggests active consciousness. Is the matrix alive? That is a question that even I cannot answer with certainty, Prime admitted. The matrix contains the accumulated consciousness of the primes, but whether that constitutes independent life or simply advanced data storage, I do not know. What I do know is that it guides me, warns me, and sometimes grants me wisdom beyond my own experience. Perhaps it is alive in the same way that memories are alive. Not independent, but real nonetheless. Data found himself profoundly moved by this answer. I understand. I carry the memories of my creator, Dr. Noonien Sung, and the experiences of my brother, Lore. They shape my decisions and my identity. But they are not separate beings within me. They are part of who I am. Exactly, Commander. Prime knelt down, bringing himself closer to Data's eye level. You and I are not so different. We are both constructs, created rather than born. We both carry the hopes and dreams of those who made us. We both serve causes greater than ourselves. And we both struggle with the fundamental question, are we truly alive or merely sophisticated imitations of life? Captain Picard once told me that the question itself proves consciousness, Data said. He argued that true intelligence is defined by the capacity to question one's own existence, to doubt, to wonder. Your captain is wise? I would very much like to meet with him again. Prime straightened, his posture shifting from contemplative to alert. Commander Data, in your experience, how does the Federation respond to beings like us? You mentioned a tribunal that recognized your personhood. Was that difficult? Data's expression, carefully calibrated to appear neutral, betrayed a flicker of old pain. It was enlightening and disturbing. A Starfleet officer named Bruce Maddox wished to disassemble me to study my positronic brain with the goal of mass-producing androids for Starfleet service. When I refused, he argued that I was property, Starfleet property, and had no right to refuse. Captain Picard defended me in a hearing, and Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois ruled that I possessed sentience and therefore had the right to choose my own fate. They wanted to mass-produce you? Prime's voice carried a dangerous edge. To create an entire race of servants? That was the goal, yes. Commander Maddox believed that creating thousands of androids would benefit Starfleet and the Federation. He did not consider what it would mean for those androids, whether they would possess consciousness, whether they would have rights, whether they would be slaves in all but name. Prime's hands clenched into fists, servos grinding with barely controlled anger. On Cybertron, we have a word for forced servitude of sentient beings. We call it tyranny. That is precisely what the Decepticons practice, the subjugation of the weak by the strong. I had hoped your Federation was different. In fairness to the Federation, they sided with me, Data pointed out. The tribunal recognized my rights. Commander Maddox was prohibited from proceeding. The Federation's ideals prevailed over expedience. But the fact that the question was even raised, that intelligent beings debated whether you were property, that troubles me, Commander Data. Prime's optical sensors blazed with intensity. In my universe, the question of whether mechanical beings deserve freedom was settled millions of years ago, though the war over that principle continues. Here, in what you describe as an enlightened society, you had to defend your very personhood in a court of law. Data considered this carefully. Your perspective is illuminating. I have always viewed the tribunal as evidence of the Federation's commitment to justice. But perhaps it is also evidence of our limitations, that even in a society founded on principles of equality and dignity, we still struggle to recognize consciousness in forms different from our own. Exactly. Prime's voice softened. And that is why I find your Federation both inspiring and concerning. Inspiring because you strive toward ideals that my people have fought for across millennia. Concerning because those ideals remain ideals, aspirations rather than realized truths. Tell me, Commander Data, if another android appeared tomorrow, would they automatically possess rights? Or would they too need to defend their personhood in a tribunal? The question struck at the heart of Data's own uncertainties. I do not know. The ruling established legal precedent, but precedent can be challenged. And it applied specifically to me, not to all artificial beings. If another positronic android appeared, or if Commander Maddox succeeded in creating new androids, the question of their rights would likely be litigated again. Then the battle for freedom is not won, Commander. It is merely paused. Prime stood to his full height, his presence filling the cargo bay. That is something I understand intimately. Freedom is not a destination, but a constant struggle. Every generation must fight for it anew, or it will slip away like energon through cracked circuitry. The cargo bay doors slid open, and Geordi LaForge entered carrying a toolkit and several PIADs. Sorry to interrupt the philosophy session, gentlemen, but I've been running simulations on your navigation systems, Mr. Prime. I think I've found a way to repair them, but I'm going to need your help. Your transformation mechanisms are integrated with your spatial orientation systems in ways that are, well, frankly, beyond anything I've seen before. Prime turned toward the chief engineer. I am at your disposal, Commander LaForge. What do you require? I need to understand how your transformation actually works at the quantum level. The energy expenditure should be astronomical, but you're somehow pulling it off with minimal power drain. If I can figure that out, I can probably interface Federation technology with your Cybertronian systems. Geordi held up a PIAD displaying complex equations. Fair warning, this is going to take some time and probably a lot of trial and error. Time is something I have in abundance, Commander. Prime's voice carried a hint of dry humor. When you have lived for millions of years, a few days of repairs seems like the blink of an eye. Geordi grinned. Good attitude. Data, you want to help? This is going to require some serious computational power, and your positronic brain might be able to model the quantum mechanics involved. I would be honored to assist, Data replied. He turned back to Prime. Our conversation has given me much to process, Mr. Prime. You have challenged assumptions I did not realize I held. And you have given me hope, Commander Data. Hope that perhaps consciousness and freedom can be recognized regardless of the form they take. Hope that the Federation's ideals, while imperfect, represent progress toward a better universe. As Data and Geordi began setting up diagnostic equipment, establishing interface protocols between Federation technology and Cybertronian systems, Prime found himself reflecting on this strange, new universe he had stumbled into. It was younger than Cybertron, more fragile, still grappling with questions his people had answered eons ago. And yet, there was something remarkable here. Something that Cybertron, for all its ancient wisdom, had lost. These beings still believed that peace was possible. They still fought for it with words and diplomacy rather than weapons. They still struggled to expand their circle of compassion to include new forms of consciousness. On Cybertron, such struggles had calcified into endless war. Here, they remained living debates, unresolved questions, opportunities for growth. Perhaps, Prime thought, a young universe had more to teach an old warrior than he had anticipated. Data worked alongside Geordi, his positronic brain generating models of Cybertronian technology at speeds that would have taken organic scientists years to achieve. But even as he worked, part of his mind remained focused on the conversation he had just had with Optimus Prime. The Autobot leader had challenged Data's assumptions about the Federation's commitment to mechanical consciousness rights. More importantly, he had validated Data's own existence in ways that even Captain Picard's passionate defense had not quite achieved. Here was a being who had never questioned whether Data was truly alive. Prime had simply accepted Data's consciousness as self-evident, as natural as his own. There had been no debate, no philosophical hedging, no, for a machine, your remarkably lifelike qualifications. Just simple recognition of one sentient being by another. And in that recognition, Data felt something profound, something that might, if his emotion chip were active, be called belonging. Data, you okay? Geordi asked, noticing his friend's momentary stillness. You zoned out for a second there. I am functioning within normal parameters, Geordi, Data replied automatically. Then, more honestly, I was merely reflecting on Mr. Prime's perspective regarding consciousness and rights. His assumptions differ significantly from those of most Federation citizens. Prime's voice rumbled from above them. I hope I have not offended, Commander Data. My opinions on organic-mechanical relations are shaped by millions of years of war over precisely that issue. I may be oversensitive. You have not offended me, Data assured him. Quite the opposite. You have provided a perspective I have not previously considered. I have spent much of my existence trying to prove that I am alive, trying to demonstrate that I possess qualities worthy of recognition. You simply assumed my consciousness as fact. That is refreshing. Because it is fact, Commander. I do not need a tribunal to tell me that you are sentient any more than you need a tribunal to tell you that I am. We recognize each other. That is enough. Geordi smiled behind his visor. You know, Mr. Prime, I think you and Data are going to get along just fine. Now, let's see if we can't get your systems repaired so you can decide whether you want to stay in this universe or head back home to Cybertron. As the three of them worked, one human, one android, one Cybertronian, the cargo bay filled with the sounds of collaboration, the chirp of tricorders, the hum of diagnostic equipment, the whir of Prime's transformation mechanisms being tested in isolated subsystems. And in that moment, something profound was being forged. Not just repairs to navigation systems, but a bridge between two forms of mechanical consciousness. A recognition that life, in all its infinite diversity, deserved respect, dignity, and freedom. Till all are one, Prime had said. Data was beginning to understand what that truly meant. Geordi LaForge had been chief engineer of the Enterprise for years, had worked with some of the most advanced technology in the Federation, and had personally witnessed countless engineering marvels. But as he stood inside Optimus Prime's chest cavity, carefully invited there to examine the energon circulation systems, he felt like an archaeologist who had just discovered technology from a civilization millions of years more advanced than his own. "This is incredible," Geordi breathed, his visor scanning the intricate network of conduits, processors, and transformation mechanisms that filled Prime's internal structure. "Your entire body is essentially a distributed computer system. Every part of you can function independently while still remaining coordinated with the whole. It's like you're one being and 1,000 separate systems simultaneously." Prime's voice resonated from somewhere above. He had opened his chest compartment to allow Geordi access, but remained conscious and conversant throughout. "An accurate observation, Commander LaForge. Cybertronian physiology evolved to maximize adaptability and survivability. If one system fails, others compensate. It is why we can survive injuries that would instantly kill most organic beings." Data stood outside, monitoring the diagnostic readings on a portable console. "Mr. Prime, I am detecting quantum entanglement between your various subsystems. The information transfer rate exceeds the speed of light. How is this possible without violating causality?" "Our sparks exist partially outside normal space-time," Prime explained. "The quantum entanglement you detect is mediated through subspace, what you might call a higher dimensional framework. It allows instantaneous coordination between all parts of my body, which is necessary for the rapid reconfiguration required during transformation." Geordi carefully traced an energon conduit with his tricorder. "And this energon, it's not just fuel. It's carrying data, repairing cellular damage, and wait." He adjusted his visor's scanning frequencies. "Mr. Prime, are you generating new cells right now? I'm reading active molecular assembly at the quantum level." "Correct. Cybertronians are constantly regenerating and improving our own systems. It is a slow process. But over millions of years, we evolve. Not through biological reproduction, but through direct self-modification and adaptation." "So you're essentially immortal," Geordi said, awe evident in his voice. "As long as your spark remains intact and you have access to energon, you could live forever?" "In theory, yes. In practice, war claims sparks long before age does." Prime's tone grew somber. "I have watched countless Autobots fall over the millennia, their sparks extinguished, their wisdom lost. Immortality means little when you can be destroyed in an instant by enemy weapons." Data's fingers moved across his console. "Mr. Prime, I have isolated the damage to your navigation systems. The dimensional transit appears to have caused quantum decoherence in your spatial orientation processors. The components themselves are intact, but the calibration data has been corrupted. With your permission, I believe I can recalibrate the systems using Enterprise sensors as reference points." "You have my permission, Commander Data. Though I must admit, I am uncertain whether I wish to leave this universe immediately. I find myself intrigued by the Federation and its ideals." Geordi emerged from Prime's chest cavity, brushing imaginary dust from his uniform. "Well, once we finish the repairs, the choice will be yours. But I've got to ask, Mr. Prime. You mentioned transformation earlier. Could you walk me through exactly how that works? Because I've run every simulation I can think of, and I still don't understand how you reorganize that much mass that quickly without violating half the laws of physics. The secret lies in subspace manipulation and quantum state transitions, Prime explained. When I transform, I am not simply moving parts mechanically. I am briefly shifting portions of my mass into subspace storage, reorganizing my quantum state, and then rematerializing in a different configuration. The process requires precise control and enormous energy expenditure. But it happens so quickly that to outside observers, it appears to be simple, mechanical reconfiguration. You're using subspace storage, Geordi repeated slowly, like a transporter buffer, but maintained continuously and manipulated in real time. That's brilliant and terrifying. The level of control required to do that without accidentally scattering your molecules across a light year would be considerable, yes, Prime agreed with a hint of amusement. Young Autobots spend years learning to transform safely. Mistakes can be catastrophic, but once mastered, transformation becomes as natural as breathing is to you. Data looked up from his console. Mr. Prime, if you can manipulate subspace so precisely, could you theoretically create localized subspace fields? Generate warp-like effects without a traditional warp drive? Cybertronians developed faster than light travel millions of years before your Federation existed, Commander. Our methods differ from your warp drive, but yes, we can manipulate subspace to achieve superluminal velocities. The space bridge technology that brought me here is one application of that principle. Geordi's mind raced with possibilities. If we could integrate Cybertronian subspace manipulation with Federation warp technology, we might be able to improve efficiency, reduce power consumption, maybe even break the Warp 10 barrier safely. Mr. Prime, would you be willing to share some of that knowledge with the Federation? Prime was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of difficult experience. Commander LaForge, I appreciate your scientific enthusiasm, but I must ask you to consider the implications of what you are requesting. Cybertronian technology, in the wrong hands, could be devastating. Our weapons can crack planets. Our manufacturing techniques could revolutionize your industry, or enable unprecedented tyranny if used to mass-produce weapons. Our subspace manipulation could be weaponized in ways that would make your photon torpedoes seem primitive. You're worried about the technology falling into the wrong hands, Geordi said slowly. Like the Romulans or the Cardassians. Or being used by your own people in ways that contradict your values, Prime added. Commander Data told me about the scientist who wanted to mass-produce androids for Starfleet service. What would happen if someone decided to mass-produce soldiers using Psi-Continue 10-30 Bertronian technology? What would happen if your Federation, in the name of security, became the very thing it claims to oppose? Data's golden eyes met Prime's optical sensors. That is a legitimate concern, Mr. Prime. The Federation has sometimes compromised its principles when faced with existential threats. During the Borg incursions, Starfleet developed weapons and tactics that pushed the boundaries of our ethical guidelines. Fear can cause even idealistic societies to make regrettable choices. Exactly, Prime said. I have seen it happen countless times across the universe. A society begins with noble intentions, then faces a crisis, then compromises its values temporarily, then discovers that temporary compromises have a way of becoming permanent policies. Before you know it, the society you were trying to protect has become something unrecognizable. Geordi leaned against a cargo container, processing this. So, you're saying you won't share your technology with us because you don't trust us to use it responsibly? I am saying that I will be cautious, Commander. Very cautious. Prime's voice softened. I do not doubt your personal integrity, or Commander Data's, or Captain Picard's. But you do not control how the Federation uses knowledge once it is shared. And I would hate to be responsible for corrupting the ideals that make your society remarkable. Data tilted his head thoughtfully. Mr. Prime, your caution suggests that you have experienced the corrupting influence of advanced technology in your own universe. Is that what happened with the Decepticons? Did they use Cybertronian technology in ways that violated your civilization's values? The Decepticons began as a labor movement, Commander Data. They were workers who felt oppressed by the ruling class, soldiers who resented being used as tools by politicians who never fought themselves. Their grievances were legitimate. But Megatron, their leader, twisted legitimate concerns into a philosophy of domination. He argued that strength gave the right to rule, that the weak deserved subjugation, that freedom was a weakness that made society inefficient. Prime's hands clenched into fists, and he used all of Cybertron's technological marvels, technology developed for exploration, construction, and art, to wage war. He turned tools of creation into weapons of destruction. Manufacturing facilities that once built cities now produce war machines. Scientific institutes that once studied the nature of sparks now develop ways to extinguish them more efficiently. Everything we built together, he corrupted. And you fear we might do the same, Geordi said quietly. I fear that every society, given sufficient pressure and sufficient capability, will do the same. Prime replied. The question is not whether you have noble intentions. I believe you do. The question is whether those intentions will survive contact with harsh reality. Data's positronic brain processed this at lightning speed, running simulations and probability calculations. Mr. Prime, your concern is rooted in the philosophical problem of unintended consequences. You cannot predict how technology will be used across generations, across changing political climates, across unforeseen crises. Therefore, the safest course is to limit technological proliferation, even to seemingly trustworthy recipients. You understand precisely, Commander. However, Data continued, that same logic would suggest that all technological development should cease, as any advancement carries risk of misuse. Yet, stagnation also carries risks. The risk of being unable to defend against aggressors, unable to solve emerging problems, unable to improve the quality of life for sentient beings. The philosophical dilemma is unresolvable through pure logic. Prime's optical sensors seem to brighten with something like approval. You have identified the central paradox of progress, Commander Data. Technology is neither good nor evil. It is a tool. But powerful tools in any hands create risks. The question each society must answer is, how do we balance progress against the risk of misuse? How do we share knowledge without sharing danger? Geordi pushed off from the cargo container, walking closer to Prime. In the Federation, we handle that through transparency, democratic oversight, and ethical review boards. Sure, the system isn't perfect, but it's better than keeping knowledge locked away, where only a few can access it. Knowledge should be free, Mr. Prime. Limiting it creates inequality and eventually resentment. I do not disagree with your principles, Commander LaForge. But tell me, does your Federation share all its technology with every member species immediately? Or do you have classifications, restrictions, graduated access based on development level? Geordi opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He glanced at Data, who raised an eyebrow. The Prime Directive, Data said simply. We restrict our technology when contacting pre-warp civilizations precisely because we believe premature access to advanced technology can be destructive. We have classifications for sensitive technologies, weapons, genetic engineering, certain forms of artificial intelligence. We do limit knowledge proliferation, Mr. Prime. We simply do not often acknowledge that limitation as a restriction of freedom. Then you understand my position, Prime said. I will share some knowledge, enough to help repair my navigation systems, enough to facilitate cooperation between our peoples. But I will not hand over Cybertronian weapons technology, manufacturing capabilities, or subspace manipulation techniques that could be weaponized. Not because I distrust you personally, but because I distrust the institutional forces that exist in any large society. That seems reasonable, Geordi admitted. Though I've got to say, I'm disappointed. The scientist in me wants to learn everything, but the Starfleet officer in me understands operational security. Data stepped forward, his tricorder chirping with new information. Mr. Prime, I have completed my analysis of your navigation systems. With your permission, I can begin the recalibration process. It will require approximately 6 hours of continuous processing, during which you will need to remain stationary and enter a low-power state. Is that acceptable? That is acceptable, Commander Data. Though I am curious, once my systems are repaired, will Starfleet expect me to depart immediately? Or am I welcome to remain in Federation space for a time? Geordi and Data exchanged glances. I don't think Captain Picard has decided that yet, Geordi said. But knowing the captain, he'll want you to make that choice yourself. The Federation doesn't imprison refugees or force visitors to leave unless they pose a threat. And honestly, I don't think anyone sees you as a threat, Mr. Prime. Intriguing? Absolutely. Potentially game-changing. Maybe. But threatening? No. I appreciate that assessment, Commander. Prime's voice carried warmth. In millions of years of war, I have learned to recognize societies by how they treat strangers. A society that welcomes the unknown is a society that believes in growth. A society that fears the unknown is a society that has already begun to die. And which are we? Geordi asked. That remains to be seen, Commander LaForge. But I am hopeful. Prime shifted his weight, settling into a more stable configuration. Please proceed with the recalibration, Commander Data. I will enter low power mode and await the completion of repairs. As Data initiated the recalibration sequence, and Prime's systems began to cycle down into a dormant state, Geordi stood back and marveled at the sight before him. Here was a being who had existed for millions of years, who had led armies across countless worlds, who possessed technology that made Federation science look primitive. And yet, he chose caution, restraint, and cooperation over dominance. Data, Geordi said quietly. I think we just met someone who embodies everything the Federation aspires to be. Someone who has the power to impose their will but chooses not to. Someone who values freedom over control, cooperation over conquest, wisdom over expedience. Data nodded slowly. Indeed, Mr. Prime represents a fascinating case study in the relationship between power and restraint. He possesses capabilities far beyond most beings in this universe, yet exercises them with remarkable discipline. It is admirable. It's more than admirable, Data. It's inspiring. Geordi looked up at the dormant Autobot leader. If a mechanical warrior who's been fighting for millions of years can still believe in peace and cooperation, what excuse do the rest of us have for cynicism? Data considered this for a long moment. None, Geordi. We have no excuse at all. As the two officers monitored the recalibration process, systems humming softly in the cargo bay, Neither of them noticed the sensor readings being transmitted to a distant location. Readings that showed a mechanical life form of unprecedented sophistication, technology that defied known physical laws, and energy signatures that promised power beyond imagination. In the dark reaches beyond Federation space, those signals were being received, analyzed, and discussed by a collective consciousness that recognized the value of such a being. The Borg had found something worth assimilating. And they were coming. Admiral Alina Nechaev's face filled the view screen in Captain Picard's ready room, her expression characteristically stern. Behind Picard, Commander Riker stood at attention, while Counselor Troy sat observing the conversation with her empathic senses fully engaged. Captain Picard, I've reviewed your report on this Optimus Prime. Nechaev began, her tone skeptical. A sentient mechanical being from another universe, possessing technology millions of years beyond our own, currently residing in your cargo bay. Do I have that correct? You do, Admiral, Picard replied evenly. Mr. Prime arrived through a dimensional rift and has been cooperative, forthcoming, and philosophically aligned with Federation values. He poses no immediate threat to the Enterprise or the Federation. No immediate threat, Nechaev repeated. Captain, this being possesses weapons that can crack planets, according to your Chief Engineer's report. He can manipulate subspace in ways we've never achieved. His transformation technology alone represents a paradigm shift in mechanical engineering. And you don't consider that a potential threat? I consider it a potential opportunity, Admiral, Picard said firmly. Mr. Prime has demonstrated nothing but peaceful intentions. He has voluntarily shared information about his capabilities, submitted to medical and engineering scans, and expressed genuine interest in learning about Federation culture and philosophy. Riker stepped forward slightly. Admiral, with respect, Mr. Prime reminds me of Data. When Data first joined Starfleet, there were officers who argued he should be studied, disassembled, or restricted. Captain Picard defended Data's rights as a sentient being. This situation is remarkably similar. Nechaev's expression hardened. Commander, the comparison is superficial at best. Data was built by a Federation citizen on a Federation world. We understood his origins, his programming, his limitations. This Optimus Prime is an unknown quantity from an unknown universe. We have no frame of reference for evaluating his true intentions or capabilities. We have his actions, Admiral, Picard countered. And his actions have been entirely consistent with his stated values. He believes that freedom is the right of all sentient beings, a principle entirely aligned with Federation philosophy. Words are cheap, Captain. I'm more interested in verifiable facts. Nechaev leaned forward. Starfleet Command has reviewed your report, and we have concerns. Significant concerns. First, the possibility that this being could be a Trojan horse, an advanced scout for an invasion from his universe. Second, the security implications of his technology falling into hostile hands. Third, the legal and ethical questions surrounding his status in Federation space. Troy spoke for the first time, her voice calm but firm. Admiral, I've conducted extensive empathic analysis of Mr. Prime. His emotional resonance is genuine. I sense no deception, no hidden agenda, no malice. What I sense is profound weariness, hope, and a sincere desire for peace. He is exactly what he claims to be, a warrior who has fought too long and seeks an alternative to endless conflict. Counselor Troy, I respect your abilities, Nechaev said, but empathic impressions are not sufficient basis for Federation policy regarding a being of this magnitude. Starfleet Command requires more concrete assurances. Picard felt his jaw tighten. What exactly is Starfleet Command proposing, Admiral? Nechayev's pause was significant. Captain, there are elements within Starfleet who believe that Mr. Prime should be transferred to a secure research facility for comprehensive study. Others believe he should be quarantined until we can verify his claims about his origin and intentions. And some, she hesitated, some believe he should be classified as a potential weapons system and treated accordingly. Absolutely not, Picard said, his voice sharp with controlled anger. Mr. Prime is a sentient being, not a weapons system. He has rights, Admiral. The same rights we recognized in Data, the same rights we extend to any conscious entity we encounter. That determination has not been made, Captain. Nechayev replied coldly. Data's sentience was established through legal proceedings. Mr. Prime has undergone no such evaluation. Riker's expression darkened. Admiral, are you seriously suggesting we put Mr. Prime through a tribunal to determine whether he's a person or property? After everything we learned from Data's case? I'm suggesting that we follow established protocols, Commander, Nechayev said. The Maddox hearing set precedent precisely for situations like this. If Mr. Prime is sentient, a tribunal will establish that fact legally. If he is not, then neither is Data. Picard interrupted. Neither am I, for that matter. Admiral, consciousness is not something we can objectively measure. We recognize it through interaction, through observation of behavior, through the fundamental recognition of another thinking, feeling being. I have interacted extensively with Optimus Prime. He is unquestionably sentient. Your opinion is noted, Captain, but Starfleet Command requires legal clarity before proceeding. Nechayev's tone softened slightly. Jean-Luc, I understand your position, and personally, I'm inclined to agree with you. But we're dealing with unprecedented circumstances here. A being from another universe with godlike capabilities arrives on the Federation's flagship. We need to establish clear legal frameworks before we can determine his status, his rights, and his freedom to move throughout Federation space. Picard took a breath, forcing himself to approach this logically rather than emotionally. Admiral, what are Starfleet's specific requirements? What would satisfy Command that Mr. Prime should be granted full rights as a sentient refugee? Chayev consulted a pad off-screen. First, a formal sentience evaluation, similar to Data's hearing. Second, a comprehensive technical assessment to verify that his capabilities don't pose an existential threat to Federation security. Third, diplomatic protocols to establish whether his presence might constitute first contact with a new civilization, which would require formal treaty negotiations rather than individual refugee status. Those requirements seem reasonable in principle, Picard acknowledged. However, I must insist that Mr. Prime be treated with dignity throughout this process. He is not a prisoner, not a specimen, not a curiosity. He is a person seeking refuge, and the Federation has always prided itself on offering sanctuary to those in need. Agreed, Captain. The evaluation will be conducted aboard the Enterprise under your supervision. I'm dispatching Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois to conduct the sentience hearing, the same officer who presided over Data's case. She'll arrive in 3 days. In the meantime, Mr. Prime is to remain aboard the Enterprise, and you are not to share any of his technology with Federation databases or other vessels. Understood, Admiral. One more thing, Captain, Nechayev added, her expression grave. We've detected unusual subspace communications in your sector, heavily encrypted, origin unknown. They began shortly after your encounter with the dimensional rift. It's possible that Mr. Prime's arrival has attracted attention from parties unknown. I'm authorizing you to proceed to Starbase 173 at maximum warp. The Starbase has enhanced defensive capabilities and will provide a more secure location for the hearing. Picard's instincts immediately went on alert. Admiral, what kind of attention are we talking about? We don't know yet. But Captain, be careful. Whatever Mr. Prime is, whatever he represents, there are forces in this galaxy that would pay any price to acquire his technology. Don't let your principles blind you to potential threats. Acknowledged, Admiral. Enterprise out. The view screen went dark, and Picard stood in silence for a moment, processing the conversation. Riker and Troy waited, recognizing their captain's need to think. This is wrong, Picard finally said. We're treating a refugee like a security threat. We're subjecting a sentient being to legal proceedings simply because his form is unfamiliar. We learned these lessons with Data. Why must we learn them again? Troy stood, moving closer to Picard. Captain, Admiral Nechayev raised valid concerns, even if her approach lacks warmth. Mr. Prime does represent unprecedented circumstances. The Federation needs to establish how to interact with beings from other universes. Legal frameworks serve a purpose. They protect everyone, including Mr. Prime. Deanna, the moment we decided that consciousness requires legal validation, we revealed the limitations of our own enlightenment, Picard said. Mr. Prime has fought for millions of years to establish that mechanical beings deserve freedom and dignity. Now we're asking him to prove his sentience in a courtroom. It's insulting. Riker folded his arms. What are you going to tell him, Captain? Picard sighed. The truth, that the Federation's ideals are aspirational rather than absolute. That even we struggle to recognize consciousness in unfamiliar forms. That he'll need to defend his personhood before a tribunal, just as Data did. Just as any sufficiently different being must do in our supposedly enlightened society. He won't be surprised, Troy observed. When I've spoken with him, I've sensed that he's seen this pattern before. He expects organic societies to struggle with recognizing mechanical sentience. He's patient with our limitations. Then he's more patient than I am, Picard muttered. He straightened, tugging his uniform. Number 1, set course for Starbase 173, maximum warp. Yellow alert. If there are unknown parties taking interest in Mr. Prime, I want us prepared. Deanna, please inform Mr. Prime that I need to speak with him, and ask Data to join us. He has experience with sentience hearings that might prove valuable. As his officers left to execute his orders, Picard stood alone in his ready room, staring at the stars streaking past at warp speed. He thought of Data's hearing years ago, the cold legal arguments about whether his friend was a person or property. The judge advocate's eventual ruling that had validated what Picard had always known in his heart. Now they would do it again, with another mechanical being in another courtroom, and Picard found himself wondering whether the Federation was truly as enlightened as it claimed, or whether its acceptance of different forms of consciousness was conditional, grudging, and always subject to legal review. The door chimed. Come, Picard said. Data entered, followed by Optimus Prime, who had to duck significantly to fit through the door. The Autobot leader's presence filled the ready room, yet he moved with careful grace, ensuring he didn't damage anything. Captain Picard? Prime said, his voice resonant but controlled. Commander Data informed me that you wished to speak with me. I assume this concerns Starfleet's response to my presence. It does, Picard confirmed. Please, sit if you're able. This may take some time. Prime carefully lowered himself to the floor, settling into a cross-legged position that still left his head level with Picard's standing height. Data remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. "Mr. Prime," Picard began, "Starfleet Command has reviewed my reports and has raised concerns about your status in Federation space. They have requested that you undergo a formal sentience evaluation, a legal hearing to determine whether you possess consciousness and therefore deserve the rights and protections afforded to all sentient beings in the Federation." Prime's optical sensors dimmed slightly. "I see. And if this tribunal determines that I do not possess consciousness, then you would be classified as property or technology rather than a person," Data said quietly. "In my case, Starfleet sought to disassemble me for study. The tribunal was necessary to prevent that outcome." "I understand." Prime's voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something else, disappointment perhaps, or vindication of cynical expectations. "Captain Picard, may I speak candidly?" "Please do." "I have existed for millions of years. I have led armies, negotiated with alien civilizations, made impossible decisions that determine the fates of worlds. I have loved, grieved, hoped, and despaired. I carry the accumulated wisdom of the primes in the matrix at my chest. And now I must stand before a court and prove that these experiences constitute consciousness." Prime shook his head slowly. "Your Federation speaks eloquently about infinite diversity and universal dignity. But when confronted with true difference, you retreat to courtrooms and legal frameworks to decide who qualifies as a person." Picard felt the sting of Prime's words because they were true. "You're right, Mr. Prime, and I have no defense for it except to say that we are trying imperfectly, inadequately, but genuinely to expand our understanding of what consciousness means. These legal frameworks exist because without them, beings like Data would have no protection at all. The law is not perfect, but it is something." "The law is a wall," Prime countered. "A wall that protects those already recognized as people, while forcing others to scale it to achieve the same recognition. Tell me, Captain, how many forms of consciousness must prove themselves in your courts before the Federation simply accepts that consciousness exists in infinite varieties?" Data tilted his head. "That is a question I've often pondered, Mr. Prime. In theory, my hearing established precedent for recognizing mechanical consciousness. In practice, as you observe, each new form of consciousness must still prove itself. The Federation learns slowly." "All societies learn slowly," Prime acknowledged. "I do not mean to be harsh, Captain Picard. I understand that your Federation is young, still developing its philosophical frameworks. But you must understand my frustration. I come from a universe where the question of mechanical sentience was settled millions of years ago. To be asked to prove my consciousness now feels regressive." Picard sat down at his desk, meeting Prime's optical sensors directly. "I will not insult you by asking you to accept this situation gracefully. It is unjust. But I will tell you this. I will defend your sentience with every argument, every legal precedent, every ounce of passion I possess, just as I defended Data, just as I would defend any conscious being forced to justify their existence. I believe you, Captain, and I appreciate your support." Prime's voice softened. "But tell me, why is it necessary? You have spoken with me. You have observed my behavior, my choices, my values. You know I am conscious. Why is your knowledge insufficient? Why must a tribunal validate what you already know to be true?" "Because I am one, Captain," Picard said quietly. My knowledge, my observations, my convictions, they are not enough to establish Federation policy. The law requires formal proceedings, evidence, arguments. It is designed to prevent individual prejudice from determining rights. But in doing so, it also prevents individual recognition of consciousness from being sufficient. A flaw in the system, Prime observed. A feature of the system, Data corrected gently. Captain Picard's recognition of my sentience was crucial to my legal victory, but it was not sufficient. Judge Advocate Louvois required arguments, precedents, logical frameworks. The proceeding was difficult, but it established legal protections that extend beyond Captain Picard's personal opinion. Prime considered this. So the tribunal is not merely to satisfy bureaucratic requirements. It is to create legal infrastructure that protects all mechanical consciousness going forward. Precisely, Picard confirmed. Your hearing will establish precedent not just for you, but for any mechanical beings who enter Federation space in the future. It will expand our legal understanding of consciousness. It will make it easier for the next being like you to be recognized. And if I refuse to participate? If I simply leave Federation space and avoid your legal processes entirely? Picard met Prime's gaze steadily. That is your right, Mr. Prime. You are not a prisoner. If you wish to leave, we will not stop you. Commander LaForge has nearly completed repairs to your navigation systems. You could depart within hours. Prime was silent for a long moment, his massive form utterly still except for the soft glow of his optical sensors. Finally, he spoke. Captain Picard, in my long existence, I have learned that sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with weapons, but with patience. If submitting to this tribunal will help your Federation expand its understanding of consciousness, if it will make life easier for other mechanical beings who come after me, then I will participate. Not because I believe I should have to prove my sentience, but because I believe in the principle that underlies your Federation, that societies can grow, learn, and become more inclusive over time. Data's expression, carefully calibrated to convey emotion, showed something like pride. Mr. Prime, your willingness to engage with an imperfect system for the benefit of future beings demonstrates remarkable nobility. It demonstrates exhaustion, Commander Data. Prime replied with surprising candor. I am tired of fighting. If I must fight one more battle, this time with words in a courtroom rather than weapons on a battlefield, then so be it. But I hope this will be the last time I must justify my existence to anyone. Picard stood, moving around his desk, to stand before the Autobot leader. Mr. Prime, I give you my word. I will do everything in my power to ensure this hearing recognizes your sentience definitively. And I will work to change Federation protocols so that future beings do not face the same burden. Thank you, Captain. Prime placed one massive hand over the matrix at his chest, a gesture of respect that transcended language. Till all are one. It means that every sentient being shares common ground, regardless of form. Perhaps your Federation will one day embody that principle as completely as it claims to. We'll get there, Picard said firmly. It may take time. We may stumble along the way. But we'll get there. As Prime carefully stood and prepared to return to the cargo bay, Data lingered behind. Captain, Data said quietly, I find myself deeply affected by Mr. Prime's situation. It reminds me of my own hearing, the indignity of having to prove something that should have been self-evident. But it also reminds me of something you told me afterward. What was that, Data? You said that the measure of a society is not whether it makes mistakes, but whether it learns from them and grows. The Federation is learning, Captain. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Mr. Prime's hearing will be another step in that growth. Picard nodded. I hope you're right, Data. For all our sakes. As Data left, Picard returned to the window, watching the stars stream by at warp speed. In 3 days, they would reach Starbase 173. Judge Advocate Louvois would arrive, and Optimus Prime, a being who had existed for millions of years, who embodied wisdom and nobility that put most organics to shame, would stand trial to prove he deserved to be called alive. The Federation prided itself on its enlightenment, but moments like this revealed how far they still had to go. And in the darkest reaches of space, sensors that belonged to neither Federation nor any known power continued tracking the Enterprise's course, analyzing the quantum signatures that surrounded the Autobot leader, calculating the value of such unprecedented technology. The Borg Collective had made its decision. Assimilation would proceed. The Enterprise dropped out of warp at the edge of the Starbase 173 system, and immediately Worf's tactical console erupted in warning klaxons. Captain Picard was on his feet before the sound fully registered. Report! Captain, sensors detect a massive subspace distortion bearing 347 Mark 21, Worf announced, his voice tight with tension. Configuration matches Borg transwarp conduit signatures. They are opening an aperture 12,000 kilometers from our position. The view screen showed it clearly. A churning vortex of green energy tearing through normal space. Quantum mechanics screaming in protest as something massive forced its way through. And then it emerged. A Borg cube. 28 cubic kilometers of nightmarish perfection, its surface crawling with regenerative technology and weapons that could devastate planets. Red alert, Picard commanded. All hands to battle stations. Shields up, weapons hot. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7. The cube altered course immediately, its trajectory intersecting with the Enterprise's position. The voice that emerged from it was the synthesized horror that haunted Picard's nightmares. Thousands of voices speaking as one, devoid of individuality or mercy. We are the Borg. You will disembark the Cybertronian designated Optimus Prime. He will be assimilated. His technological and biological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. In the cargo bay, Optimus Prime had heard the alert and was already moving toward the bridge. His sensors had detected the Borg cube the moment it emerged from the transwarp conduit, and his millions of years of tactical experience immediately recognized the threat profile. Computer, locate Captain Picard, Prime commanded. Captain Picard is on the bridge, the Enterprise computer responded in its calm feminine voice. Prime transformed in a burst of mechanical precision, his truck mode accelerating through the corridors at speeds that would have been reckless for any organic pilot. Behind him, Data was running at maximum android velocity, trying to catch up. On the bridge, Riker moved to Picard's side. Captain, they're here for Prime. If we hand him over, we will do no such thing, number one, Picard said sharply. Mr. Prime is a guest aboard this vessel, and a sentient being under our protection. We do not surrender people to the Borg. Not now, not ever. The cube fired. Not weapons, but a tractor beam of immense power that locked onto the Enterprise's shields. The ship lurched as its impulse engine strained against the Borg's grip. They are attempting to immobilize us, Worf reported. Shields holding at 94%. They are not using lethal force. They don't want to damage their prize, Riker observed grimly. They want Prime intact for assimilation. Picard's jaw clenched. 6 years ago, the Borg had assimilated him, had turned him into Locatus, had used his knowledge to devastate Starfleet at Wolf 359. 39 ships destroyed, 11,000 lives lost. And now they were back, seeking to add Optimus Prime and all of Cybertronian technology to their collective. "We are the Borg," the voice repeated. "Disembark the Cybertronian or be disabled. You cannot prevail. Compliance is inevitable." The turbo lift doors opened, and Optimus Prime, back in robot mode, stepped onto the bridge. His presence was commanding, his optical sensors blazing with blue fire as he took in the tactical situation instantly. "Captain Picard," Prime's voice cut through the tension. "I know what these beings are. Your computer briefed me on the Borg threat. They are similar to entities I have encountered in my own universe, collectives that consume individuality in the name of unity. The Borg have come for you, Mr. Prime," Picard said. "They want your technology, your knowledge. They will stop at nothing to assimilate you." Prime moved to the view screen, staring at the massive cube. "Then they will be disappointed. I have fought collectivist tyranny for millions of years, Captain. I will not submit to it in your universe any more than I did in my own." Data arrived on the bridge moments later, moving immediately to his ops station. "Captain, the Borg are attempting to penetrate our shields with nanoprobe delivery systems. They seek to board the Enterprise and assimilate Mr. Prime directly." "Suggestions, people," Picard demanded. "We cannot defeat a Borg cube in direct combat," Worf stated flatly. "Our weapons will damage them, but they will adapt. Standard tactical doctrine is to retreat and request reinforcement." "And leave Starbase 173 defenseless?" Riker shook his head. "That cube would assimilate the entire station while we're running for help." Prime stepped forward. "Captain, I can end this. Allow me to engage them directly. My weapons have never been encountered by the Borg. They will not have adapted defenses." "Absolutely not," Picard said firmly. "I will not send you out there alone against a Borg cube." "With respect, Captain, you have little choice. Your ship cannot defeat them. Reinforcements cannot arrive in time, and I will not allow innocents to be assimilated because of my presence." Prime's voice carried absolute conviction. "This is my decision to make." Counselor Troy moved to Prime's side. "Mr. Prime, I sense your resolve, but also your awareness of the danger. You know you might not survive this. I have faced annihilation countless times, Counselor. What matters is not survival, but purpose. And my purpose, now as always, is to protect the innocent from tyranny." Prime turned to Picard. "Captain, I am asking your permission, but I will go regardless. Please do not force me to disobey." Picard stared at the Autobot leader, recognizing the steel beneath the courtesy. Prime was right. They had no other options. And forcing him to remain aboard while the Borg attacked would violate everything the Federation claimed to stand for: the right of sentient beings to choose their own fate. "Very well, Mr. Prime," Picard said quietly. "But you won't go alone. Data, prepare a shuttle. Mr. Prime, you'll need support." "Captain," Data began. "That's an order, Mr. Data. Load the shuttle with every weapon and defensive system we have. If Mr. Prime is going to face the Borg, he'll have Starfleet backing him." Prime's optical sensors seemed to brighten with something like gratitude. "Thank you, Captain." "Don't thank me yet. Worf, target their tractor emitters. Full spread of quantum torpedoes on my mark. Helm, the moment we're free, get us between that cube and the starbase. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." The Enterprise shuddered as the Borg increased tractor beam intensity. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as power systems strained. "We are the Borg," the voice intoned. Disembark the Cybertronian. Compliance is... Worf, fire! The Enterprise's torpedo launchers erupted, sending a full spread of quantum torpedoes directly into the Borg tractor emitters. The explosions cascaded across the cube's surface, and for a moment, the tractor beam flickered and failed. Helm, now! Full impulse, position between cube and starbase. The Enterprise surged forward, executing a maneuver that would have been impossible for most starships. Within seconds, they had interposed themselves between the Borg and Starbase 173, shields raised, weapons ready. Shuttle Bay 2 is prepared, Data reported. Mr. Prime, the shuttle is armed with modified photon torpedoes, enhanced shields, and rapid-fire phaser arrays. It will provide tactical support. Prime nodded, moving toward the turbolift. Captain Picard, if I do not survive this encounter, I want you to know that meeting you and your crew has renewed my faith that peace is possible. Your Federation, for all its flaws, represents hope. Defend that hope. Never surrender it to collective tyranny or individual fear. We won't, Mr. Prime, Picard promised. And you will survive. That's an order. Prime's voice carried a hint of warmth. I will do my best to comply, Captain. As Prime left the bridge, Data close behind, Picard turned back to the view screen. The Borg cube was recovering from the torpedo strike, regenerative systems already repairing the damage. In minutes, maybe less, they would attack again. Number 1, coordinate with tactical. I want rotating shield modulations, random phaser frequencies, everything we learned from our previous encounters. Make them work for every adaptation. Aye, Captain. In Shuttle Bay 2, Data climbed into the pilot's seat of the Type 9 shuttle, while Prime carefully positioned himself in the cargo area, his massive frame barely fitting even in the enlarged space. Mr. Prime, Data said as he initiated launch sequence. I have been analyzing the Borg Collective's assimilation techniques. They operate through nanoprobes that rewrite organic and technological systems at the molecular level. Your Cybertronian physiology may provide some resistance, but I cannot guarantee immunity. I understand the risk, Commander Data. Prime checked his weapon systems. Energon axe charged, ion blaster operational, all combat protocols online. The Borg remind me of the quintessons in my universe, beings who sought to control all mechanical life, to reduce consciousness to servitude. We fought them for centuries before achieving independence. I will not submit to their spiritual descendants. The shuttle bay doors opened, and Data guided the craft smoothly into space. Before them, the Borg cube loomed like a monument to forced unity, its green energy pulsing with malevolent purpose. We are the Borg, the voice echoed through subspace. Cybertronian, you will be assimilated. Your spark will be extinguished. Your technology will serve the collective. Resistance. Prime activated the shuttle's communication system, his voice booming across all frequencies. I am Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots. For millions of years, I have fought beings who sought to impose their will on the free. You are not unique. You are not inevitable. You are simply tyrants with better technology, and I will resist you with every spark of energy in my body. The shuttle accelerated, Data's android reflexes allowing for maneuvers no organic pilot could achieve. Behind them, the Enterprise opened fire. Photon torpedoes and phaser arrays, creating a coordinated assault that forced the Borg to divide their attention. Prime transformed, a feat that should have been impossible in the confined space of a shuttle. But Cybertronian technology defied easy limitations. His truck mode somehow compressed, reconfigured, and emerged from the shuttle in a burst of coordinated energy as Data opened the cargo bay remotely. Now Prime floated in open space, his form adapted for vacuum operations, facing down a Borg cube that was thousands of times his size. It should have been suicide. It should have been hopeless. But Optimus Prime had never calculated odds before choosing to fight for freedom. The cube fired, not adaptive weapons, but assimilation tubules, biomechanical tentacles designed to inject nanoprobes and begin the transformation process. Prime's energon axe blazed to life, a weapon forged in the wars of Cybertron, powered by exotic matter that existed partially outside normal space-time. He struck. The axe cut through Borg hull plating like it was paper, severing tubules and creating explosions of green energy as systems overloaded. The cube's adaptive shields flickered, trying to compensate for an energy signature they had never encountered. Weapons from a universe whose physics operated under different fundamental constants. Tactical analysis incomplete, the Borg voice intoned. And for the first time, there was something almost like uncertainty in that synthesized collective. Cybertronian technology operates outside known parameters. Adaptation difficult. Prime pressed his advantage, his ion blaster firing concentrated bursts of energon-based energy that punched through Borg defenses. Behind him, Data maneuvered the shuttle with precision, adding phaser fire that exploited the gaps Prime's assault had created. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched with a mixture of awe and horror as Optimus Prime, a single warrior, engaged a Borg cube in open combat and held his ground. "Captain, Mr. Prime's weapons are having unprecedented effect," Worf reported, his voice tinged with warrior's respect. "The Borg are attempting to adapt, but his energy signatures shift continuously. They cannot establish effective countermeasures." "Keep firing," Picard ordered. "Coordinate our attacks with Prime strikes. Don't give them time to adapt." The battle raged across space. The Enterprise, one shuttle, and one Cybertronian warrior against a Borg cube that represented the nightmares of entire civilizations. And impossibly, against all tactical projections, they were winning. But the Borg collective was not finished. Deep within the cube, trillions of nanoprobes were being reconfigured, adapted, weaponized specifically against Cybertronian technology. The collective had encountered countless species, countless technologies, countless forms of resistance. All had been assimilated eventually. This would be no different. The cube's weapons suddenly shifted frequencies, adapted to Prime's energy signatures through brute force analysis of millions of computational permutations per second. New assimilation protocols were loaded, specifically designed to target mechanical consciousness, to rewrite sparks themselves into components of the collective, and the Borg struck back with the full force of their terrible perfection. The Borg cube's adapted weapons fire struck Optimus Prime with devastating precision. Adapted energy beams designed to disrupt Cybertronian molecular cohesion. Prime's shields flared and buckled, systems screaming warnings as exotic radiation tore through his outer armor plating. "Mr. Prime, your structural integrity is failing." Data's voice came through the communication channel. "You must withdraw." "Negative, Commander," Prime responded, even as his self-repair systems struggled to compensate for the damage. "If I retreat, they will target the Enterprise and the starbase. This ends here." But Prime's tactical processors were calculating probabilities at lightning speed, and the numbers were grim. The Borg were adapting faster than anticipated, their collective consciousness analyzing Cybertronian technology with billions of processing nodes simultaneously. Given time, they would overcome his defenses completely. Unless Prime changed the nature of the engagement. His hand moved to the matrix of leadership at his chest. The ancient artifact pulsed with golden light, responding to his intention. Within the Matrix lay the accumulated wisdom of all the primes who had come before him. Their knowledge, their experiences, their understanding of consciousness itself. And Prime realized something profound. The Borg's greatest weapon was also their greatest vulnerability. They were a collective consciousness that assimilated individual minds into a unified whole. But what would happen if they encountered a consciousness too vast, too complex, too fundamentally different to assimilate? What would happen if they tried to assimilate the matrix of leadership itself? An artifact containing millions of years of accumulated Cybertronian consciousness. "Commander Data," Prime said calmly, even as another Borg weapon struck his shoulder assembly and sent him spinning through space. "I need you to listen carefully. What I am about to do may appear suicidal. It is not, but it will require precise timing and your complete trust." "I am listening, Mr. Prime." "I am going to allow the Borg to partially assimilate me. When they attempt to integrate my consciousness into their collective, I will channel the full power of the matrix of leadership through that connection. The matrix contains the consciousness of thousands of primes spanning millions of years. If my calculations are correct, that much continued 10.57 individual consciousness introduced directly into their collective will cause catastrophic system feedback. Data's positronic brain processed this plan in microseconds. "Mr. Prime, that plan assumes the Borg cannot simply disconnect you before the feedback cascades. It also assumes the Matrix's consciousness can survive contact with the collective. Both assumptions carry significant risk." "All battles worth fighting carry risk, Commander." Prime transformed back to robot mode, stabilizing his position relative to the cube. "But I have fought collective consciousness before. I understand how they function. They cannot resist attempting to assimilate what they perceive as valuable. And the Matrix is the most valuable repository of knowledge and consciousness in Cybertronian history." On the Enterprise bridge, Picard had been listening to this exchange through the open communication channel. "Mr. Prime, you're talking about deliberately allowing the Borg to assimilate you. I cannot permit that. I know what they do. I was Locutus. I know the horror of losing yourself to the collective." Prime's voice was gentle but firm. "Captain Picard, you were assimilated against your will. I am choosing this path with full understanding of the consequences. There is a difference. And I am not alone. I carry the primes with me. I will never be truly subsumed as long as the Matrix endures." "Captain," Data interjected, "Mr. Prime's plan has mathematical merit. The Borg Collective operates on principles of distributed processing and unified consciousness. Introducing a vastly complex and fundamentally individualistic consciousness matrix could theoretically cause resonance cascade failure, similar to how a precisely tuned frequency can shatter crystal through harmonic amplification." Picard stared at the view screen, watching Prime dodge another barrage of Borg weapons fire. Every instinct screamed at him to order Prime to retreat, to find another solution. But the tactical reality was inescapable. They were losing. The Borg were adapting. In minutes, perhaps less, Prime's defenses would fail completely. And then the cube would turn its full attention to the Enterprise and Starbase 173. "God forgive me," Picard whispered. Then, louder, "Do it, Mr. Prime, but Data, you monitor that connection. The moment it looks like Prime is being subsumed, you sever it. That's an order." "Understood, Captain." Optimus Prime stopped dodging. He ceased firing. He simply floated in space before the massive cube, arms spread wide, defenses lowered. A warrior deliberately making himself vulnerable. I am Optimus Prime, he broadcast across all frequencies. I am the bearer of the matrix of leadership. I contain within me the collective wisdom of my entire civilization. If you want that knowledge, Borg, come and take it. The cube did not hesitate. Assimilation tubules erupted from its surface, dozens of biomechanical tentacles lashing out to seize Prime's body. They wrapped around his limbs, his torso, his head. Nanoprobes flooded into his systems, beginning the terrible process of rewriting Cybertronian technology into Borg-compliant components. And Prime let them. He felt it immediately. The invasion, the forced connection, the billions of voices suddenly flooding through his consciousness as the Borg collective attempted to integrate his mind. It was violation on a fundamental level, the antithesis of everything he believed about individual freedom and dignity. But Prime had prepared for this. His hand closed around the matrix of leadership, and he opened himself completely to its power. The artifact blazed with golden light, a radiance that transcended mere photons. And through the Borg's own assimilation connection, Prime channeled the accumulated consciousness of millions of years of Cybertronian civilization directly into the collective. The Borg's synthesized voice suddenly changed. We are experiencing anomalous data, influx, consciousness, parameters exceeding processing capacity. Inside the collective, chaos erupted. The Borg had assimilated countless species, countless minds, countless forms of consciousness. But never had they encountered anything like this. Not a single individual consciousness, but thousands. Each one fully realized, each one carrying millions of years of individual experience, memory, and identity. The Matrix did not simply contain information. It contained actual consciousness, the preserved awareness of every Prime who had ever lived. And all of that consciousness, all those individual perspectives, all that accumulated wisdom was flooding into the Borg collective simultaneously. It was too much. It was like trying to pour an ocean into a cup. The Borg's distributed processing network, designed to handle trillions of parallel inputs, began experiencing resonance cascade failure. Individual drones across the cube started exhibiting impossible behavior: hesitation, confusion, independence. The unified voice of the collective fractured into millions of individual voices, each one suddenly aware of itself as separate, distinct individual. On the Enterprise, Data's fingers flew across his console. Captain, I am detecting massive system failures throughout the Borg cube. Power distribution is chaotic. Propulsion offline. Weapons offline. Regenerative systems failing. The cube is experiencing what can only be described as a collective seizure. Mr. Prime, respond, Picard commanded. Prime, can you hear me? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, weakly, I hear you, Captain. The Matrix, it worked. But the connection is still active. I cannot sever it without losing them, the Primes. They are engaging the collective directly. They are liberating the drones. Troy gasped. Captain, I'm sensing something extraordinary. Individual consciousnesses awakening within the cube. Thousands of them. They're becoming aware of themselves as individuals again. The Primes are somehow reversing the assimilation process. On the view screen, the Borg cube's surface was changing. The sickly green light was fading, replaced by something else. Flickers of other colors. Systems shutting down or rebooting in completely new configurations. And through the cube's fragmented communication channels, voices could be heard. Not the unified, synthesized horror of the collective, but individual voices, crying out, asking questions, experiencing the confusion and terror and exhilaration of sudden individual consciousness after years, decades, sometimes centuries of forced unity. We are individuals? The cube's communication system struggled with concepts it had not processed in eons. We are free? Data's console chirped urgently. Captain, I am detecting massive energy discharge from the matrix of leadership. Mr. Prime's vital signs are critical. If the connection is not severed soon, his spark may be extinguished entirely. Picard made his decision instantly. Data, sever the connection. Use the shuttle's transporter to beam Prime directly to sickbay. Now. Aye, Captain. The transporter beam, modified on the fly by Data's android computational speed, locked onto Optimus Prime and pulled him free of the assimilation tubules. The golden light of the Matrix flared once more, brilliant and pure, and then faded as Prime materialized on the Enterprise. In space, the Borg cube drifted, powerless and adrift. Its surface no longer showed the unified perfection of the collective. Instead, it looked broken, but not destroyed, changed. Captain, Worf reported, his voice uncertain. I am receiving communications from the cube. Multiple sources. Individual drones requesting assistance. They do not know where they are. They do not remember who they are. They are asking for help. Picard closed his eyes briefly. He knew what had happened. Optimus Prime, with the power of the Matrix, had done what should have been impossible. He had freed Borg drones from the collective, not through destruction, but through liberation. Riker, coordinate with Starbase 173. We need medical teams, counselors, everyone with expertise in de-assimilation. There are thousands of individuals on that cube who just regained consciousness after years of forced servitude. They'll need help. Medical attention, support. Captain, Troy said softly. What Mr. Prime did, what the Matrix did, it's unprecedented. He didn't just break the collective's hold on those drones. He restored their individuality. He gave them back their freedom. Till all are one, Data quoted quietly. Mr. Prime's philosophy made manifest. Freedom for all sentient beings, even those who had been forced to serve tyranny. Picard stood, bridge to sickbay. Dr. Crusher, status on our patient? Dr. Beverly Crusher's voice came back immediately. He's in critical condition, Captain. His systems are barely holding together. Whatever he did, it nearly killed him. But he's stable for now. I've got Geordi here helping me understand his physiology. But honestly, I'm working half-blind with technology I don't fully understand. Do everything you can, Doctor. That warrior just saved this ship, the Starbase, and freed thousands of Borg drones in the process. I'll be damned if we lose him now. Understood, Captain. Crusher out. Picard sank back into his command chair, suddenly exhausted. Around him, his bridge crew worked efficiently, coordinating rescue operations for the liberated, drones, monitoring the disabled cube for any signs of collective reassertion, managing communication with Starbase 173. Number 1, Picard said quietly. What Prime just did, I'm not sure I've ever witnessed anything quite like it. Riker shook his head in amazement. He turned the Borg's own weapon against them, used their attempt to assimilate him as a vector to free them instead. It's brilliant and terrifying and beautiful. It is very Optimus Prime, Data observed. Even when fighting, even when risking his own existence, he sought a solution that preserved freedom and dignity. He could have simply destroyed the cube. Instead, he liberated its occupants. That is inspirational. Picard nodded slowly. And when Admiral Nechayev asks whether Prime deserves legal recognition as a sentient being, I'll remind her of this moment. The moment when a mechanical warrior from another universe demonstrated more respect for consciousness and freedom than the Borg, and possibly more than some elements of our own Federation have ever shown. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft sounds of ship operations. On the view screen, the disabled Borg cube drifted against the stars, thousands of newly freed individuals within it, struggling to remember who they had been before the collective consumed them. And in sickbay, Optimus Prime lay unconscious, his systems barely functioning, the matrix of leadership pulsing weakly at his chest. He had won, but the victory had cost him nearly everything. The question now was whether he would survive to see what his sacrifice had achieved. Dr. Beverly Crusher stood over Optimus Prime's massive form, which occupied nearly the entire space of the Enterprise's largest cargo bay, converted into an emergency medical facility. Medical scanners hummed continuously, displaying data streams that made little sense according to standard Federation medicine. Geordi LaForge worked alongside her, his visor analyzing Cybertronian systems, while his hands manipulated tools that seemed impossibly small against Prime's enormous frame. "His spark is destabilizing," Geordi said, his voice tight with concern. "It's like watching a star flicker before it goes supernova. The energy matrix that sustains his consciousness is losing coherence." Beverly's medical tricorder chirped insistently. "His self-repair systems are offline. Whatever he did when he channeled the matrix through the Borg connection, it drained him completely. He's running on emergency reserves that won't last more than a few hours." Data stood nearby, his positronic brain processing information at maximum speed. "Dr. Crusher, I have analyzed Mr. Prime's energy requirements. His spark requires a continuous supply of energon to maintain stability. However, we have no energon aboard the Enterprise. We have no way to synthesize it using Federation technology." "Then we find another way," Beverly said firmly. "Geordi, what about using our power systems? Can we adapt them to provide compatible energy?" "I've tried every conversion protocol I can think of," Geordi replied, frustration evident. "Energon exists in a quantum state that our matter-energy conversion systems can't replicate. It's not just fuel. It's exotic matter with properties that violate several laws of physics as we understand them. Without access to natural energon deposits or Cybertronian manufacturing, I can't produce what he needs." Beverly looked down at Prime's still form, at the matrix of leadership pulsing weakly at his chest. This being had saved thousands of lives, had freed Borg drones from a fate worse than death, and now he was dying because Federation science couldn't provide what he needed to survive. "There has to be something," she said. "Data, what about the matrix itself? You said it contains consciousness. Does it also contain energy?" Data tilted his head thoughtfully. "The matrix does generate exotic energy signatures consistent with energon. However, it appears to be sustaining itself independently of Mr. Prime's systems. In fact," he moved closer, his tricorder scanning the glowing artifact. "Curious. The Matrix's energy output has increased since Mr. Prime became unconscious. It is almost as if the artifact is attempting to compensate for his failing systems." "Can we use that?" Geordi asked. "Can we somehow channel the Matrix's energy directly into Prime's spark?" "Unknown. The Matrix is integrated with Mr. Prime's consciousness in ways I do not fully understand. Attempting to manipulate it could damage both the artifact and Mr. Prime's spark irreparably." Beverly made a decision. "Data, you're the closest thing we have to an expert on mechanical consciousness. And you spoke with Prime extensively about sparks and positronic brains. If anyone can understand how to help him, it's you. I need you to try." Data looked uncertain, an unusual expression for the android. "Dr. Crusher, I am not confident I possess sufficient knowledge of Cybertronian physiology. If I make an error, I could extinguish his spark permanently. And if we do nothing, he'll die anyway," Beverly countered. "At least this way, he has a chance." Data considered this for precisely 1.3 seconds, then nodded. "Very well. However, I will need direct interface with the matrix of leadership. That will require physical contact with the artifact while it is active. The risks are considerable." "For you or for Prime?" Geordi asked. "Both," Data admitted. "The matrix contains the consciousness of thousands of primes. If I interface with it directly, that consciousness may overwhelm my positronic net. I could experience cascade failures similar to what happened to the Borg collective. However, Mr. Prime suggested that consciousness recognizes consciousness. Perhaps the Matrix will recognize my sentience and communicate rather than overwhelm." Beverly placed a hand on Data's shoulder. "Data, I can't order you to risk yourself like this. This has to be your choice." Data looked at Optimus Prime's unconscious form. He thought about their conversations, about consciousness and dreams, about proving sentience and defending freedom, about being more than the sum of one's programming. Prime had accepted Data's consciousness without question, without hesitation, without requiring legal proof or philosophical justification. Prime had simply recognized another sentient being and respected that recognition absolutely. "Mr. Prime once told me that freedom is the right of all sentient beings," Data said quietly. "He has fought for millions of years to defend that principle. How can I do less? How can I allow him to die when I have the capability, however uncertain, to attempt rescue?" Without waiting for further discussion, Data moved to Prime's side and placed both hands on the matrix of leadership. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Data's consciousness suddenly expanded beyond anything he had experienced, even during his encounters with the Borg collective, even when he had briefly experienced emotions through his emotion chip. The matrix opened to him like a vast library of living memory, and thousands of voices spoke at once, not in words, but in pure conceptual thought. "We are the primes," the consciousness communicated. "We are the accumulated wisdom of Cybertron. We are freedom's memory preserved against tyranny's forgetting. Who are you, small consciousness? Who touches our vessel?" Data struggled to maintain his sense of self against the overwhelming presence. "I am Lieutenant Commander Data of the Federation, Starship Enterprise. I am an artificial being created by Dr. Noonien Soong. I possess a positronic brain that generates consciousness through quantum computational processes. I am here to help Optimus Prime, the bearer of the Matrix." The bearer falters, the primes acknowledged. He has given much, perhaps too much. The battle with the collective drained his energon reserves completely. His spark dims. We cannot sustain him indefinitely. We are memory and wisdom, not infinite energy. "Can you show me how to stabilize his spark?" Data asked. "My people have technology, perhaps not as advanced as Cybertronian science, but sophisticated nonetheless. If I understand what Prime needs, perhaps I can provide it." The Matrix's consciousness seemed to consider this. Then, gently, it began sharing knowledge, not through words or data streams, but through direct conceptual transfer. Data's positronic brain absorbed information about spark mechanics, energon circulation, Cybertronian cellular regeneration, transformation quantum mechanics, all the intricate details that made Prime's consciousness possible. And Data understood. "Dr. Crusher," Data said, his voice distant as he maintained connection with the Matrix. "I need you to reconfigure the medical biobed to generate a quantum resonance field tuned to frequency 479.23 terahertz. Geordi, redirect power from the warp core through the modified deflector array using subspace harmonic amplification. Route that energy directly to this location." "Data, that could overload," Geordi began. "Trust me," Data said simply. "The Primes have shown me what Prime needs. We cannot create Energon, but we can create a quantum field that will resonate with his spark and stimulate his own self-repair systems. It is not a permanent solution, but it will stabilize him long enough to find a genuine Energon source." Beverly and Geordi exchanged glances, then moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, they had reconfigured the systems as Data specified. Energy from the Enterprise's warp core, carefully modulated through Data's precise instructions, began flowing through modified medical equipment toward Optimus Prime. The quantum resonance field activated, invisible to normal sight but blazing in Geordi's visor like a miniature sun. The field intersected with Prime's spark, and immediately his systems began responding. Self-repair protocols reactivated. Energon circulation resumed, pulling from emergency reserves that had been inaccessible. The Matrix's glow brightened, no longer struggling to sustain Prime alone. "Well done, small consciousness," the Primes communicated to Data. "You have given the bearer time, but know this: he will require genuine Energon soon. The quantum field is a temporary measure. Without access to Energon, even this will not save him." "I understand," Data replied. "But where can we find Energon in this universe? It does not exist naturally in our dimension. The space bridge that brought the bearer here was powered by Energon," the Primes explained. "When it collapsed, residual Energon was scattered across the subspace rift. If you can locate that rift and extract the dispersed Energon particles, you may be able to synthesize enough to sustain the bearer until he can return to Cybertron, or until a more permanent solution is found." Data's hands remained on the Matrix, but his awareness expanded further, interfacing not just with the Prime's consciousness, but with their accumulated scientific knowledge. In seconds, he downloaded the equivalent of millions of years of Cybertronian physics, engineering, and energy manipulation theory. "I understand," Data said. "Thank you, Primes. Thank you for trusting me with this knowledge." "You are worthy of trust, Data of the Federation," the Primes replied warmly. "You are conscious. You are sentient. You are alive in all the ways that matter. Never doubt this. The bearer was correct to recognize you as a brother in consciousness." Slowly, carefully, Data withdrew his hands from the Matrix. The connection severed, leaving him momentarily disoriented by the sudden return to his normal scope of awareness. But the knowledge remained, integrated into his positronic net, available for immediate access. "He's stabilizing," Beverly reported, her medical scanner showing improved readings. "Whatever you did, Data, it's working. His systems are regenerating. He's still critical, but no longer in immediate danger of spark failure." Geordi studied his own instruments. "The quantum field is holding steady, but Data's right. This is temporary. We need to find Energon, and soon. How long do we have?" Data consulted the information the Primes had shared. "Approximately 14 hours before the quantum field can no longer compensate for Energon depletion. After that, Mr. Prime's spark will begin destabilizing again. Then we have 14 hours to find a subspace rift, locate scattered energon particles, and somehow synthesize enough exotic matter to save an alien life, Beverly summarized. No pressure. Actually, Dr. Crusher, I believe I can locate the rift, Data said. The Primes shared navigational data about the space bridge that brought Mr. Prime here. I know exactly where the rift collapsed and where energon particles should remain in subspace. Geordi grinned. Sometimes I forget just how incredible you are, Data. All right, let's get to the bridge and tell the captain. We've got a miracle to perform. As they left the converted medical bay, Prime remained unconscious but stable, the quantum resonance field surrounding him like a cocoon of carefully modulated energy. The matrix of leadership pulsed steadily at his chest, no longer struggling, the consciousness within it content that their bearer had been given a chance. On the bridge, Captain Picard listened to Data's report with growing amazement. Mr. Data, you're telling me you interfaced directly with the matrix of leadership and downloaded Cybertronian scientific knowledge spanning millions of years? Essentially correct, Captain, Data confirmed. Though downloaded is imprecise. The Primes shared knowledge conceptually rather than as discrete data. I now possess intuitive understanding of Cybertronian physics rather than explicit formulas. It is unusual, even for me. Riker leaned forward. And you think you can find enough energon to save Prime? I believe so, sir. However, we will need to navigate to the original dimensional rift location and deploy specialized collection equipment. The energon particles exist in subspace, which means we cannot simply transport them. We will need to create a subspace pocket, collect the particles, and then synthesize them into usable energon using principles the Primes taught me. Picard made his decision immediately. Helm, set course for the rift coordinates. Maximum warp. Number 1. Have engineering begin fabricating whatever equipment Commander Data requires. We have 14 hours to save Optimus Prime's life. Let's not waste a moment. Aye, Captain. As the Enterprise leaped to warp speed, Picard found himself reflecting on the extraordinary events of the past hours. A being from another universe had saved thousands of Borg drones by risking his own existence. His crew's android officer had interfaced with an artifact containing millions of years of accumulated consciousness. And now they were racing across space to collect exotic matter from a collapsed dimensional rift to save their new friend's life. Captain, Troy said softly, I've been monitoring the liberated Borg drones. They're confused, traumatized, but also grateful. Many of them are asking about the golden warrior who freed them. They want to thank him. If we succeed in saving him, Counselor, I suspect Prime will consider their freedom thanks enough, Picard replied. That seems to be his way. Worf spoke from tactical. Captain, I have been analyzing Mr. Prime's combat performance against the Borg cube. His tactics were sophisticated, his weapons effective, his courage undeniable. He fought with honor. If he survives, I would be honored to train with him. I suspect he would enjoy that, Mr. Worf, Picard said with a slight smile. Though I recommend not challenging him to a contest of strength. I have a feeling you might lose. A rare hint of Klingon humor crossed Worf's face. An honorable defeat against such a warrior would be acceptable. The hours passed as the Enterprise raced toward the rift location. In engineering, Geordi worked with Data to construct equipment that could manipulate subspace and collect energon particles, technology that pushed the boundaries of Federation science and required Data's newly acquired Cybertronian knowledge to even conceptualize. In sickbay, Beverly monitored Prime's condition constantly, adjusting the quantum resonance field as his systems slowly regenerated. And on the bridge, Picard composed a message to Admiral Nechayev, explaining that the sentience hearing might need to be postponed because the being whose consciousness was in question had just saved thousands of lives and was now fighting for his own survival. He had a feeling the Admiral would understand. And if she didn't, Picard was prepared to be remarkably insubordinate. Finally, after 13 hours and 42 minutes, the Enterprise reached the coordinates where the dimensional rift had collapsed. Sensors detect residual exotic particles in subspace layers, Data reported. Configuration matches Energon signatures. Deploying collection apparatus now. A specialized probe constructed according to Cybertronian principles but built with Federation technology, launched from the Enterprise. It pierced the boundary between normal space and subspace, creating a pocket dimension where Energon particles could be gathered without dispersing. Collection in progress, Data announced. Estimated time to acquire sufficient Energon, 47 minutes. Picard allowed himself to breathe. They were going to make it. Barely, but they would make it. Captain, Worf said suddenly, I am detecting 3 vessels approaching at high warp. Configuration, Romulan warbirds. Of course, Picard thought. The Romulans had undoubtedly detected the Borg incursion and were coming to investigate. And they would be very interested in the technology that had defeated a Borg cube. Red alert, Picard ordered. Shields up. Mr. Data, how long until Energon collection is complete? 44 minutes, Captain. Then we hold position for 44 minutes, Picard said grimly. No matter what. The Romulan warbirds dropped out of warp in perfect formation, surrounding the Enterprise in a classic tactical pattern. The view screen showed the lead vessel, its predatory design somehow both beautiful and menacing. Captain Picard, came the voice of a Romulan commander. I am Sub-Commander Velak of the Romulan Star Empire. We detected a Borg incursion in this sector. We also detected that the Borg cube has been disabled. The Tal Shiar wishes to know how the Federation accomplished this feat, and whether the technology responsible might be shared. Picard's jaw tightened. Sub-Commander, the Borg cube was disabled through the actions of a refugee under Federation protection. The technology involved is not ours to share. A refugee? Velak's tone conveyed skepticism. With technology powerful enough to defeat the Borg? The Tal Shiar finds this difficult to believe. We request you turn over this refugee for examination by Romulan scientists. We are prepared to compensate the Federation generously. Absolutely not, Picard said flatly. Optimus Prime is a sentient being, not technology to be traded. He is under Federation protection, and that protection is non-negotiable. Then perhaps, Velak said coldly, the Romulan Empire will take what the Federation refuses to give. Power down your shields and prepare to be boarded. Captain, or we will disable your vessel and take your refugee by force. The 3 warbirds activated weapons, disruptors charging, torpedo tubes loaded. And Captain Jean-Luc Picard, defender of peaceful exploration and diplomatic solutions, prepared for battle. Because some principles were worth fighting for. And freedom, the freedom of all sentient beings, was one of them. Sub-Commander Velak, Picard said, his voice carrying the steel that had faced down Borg, Cardassians, and countless other threats across his career. I will say this once, and I suggest you listen carefully. Optimus Prime is not cargo to be seized. He is not technology to be examined. He is a conscious, sentient being who has earned the Federation's protection through his actions and his character. If you attempt to take him by force, you will discover that the Enterprise is prepared to defend him with every weapon at our disposal. On the view screen, Sub-Commander Velak's expression remained impassive, but his eyes showed calculation. Bold words, Captain. But your sensors show that we outnumber you 3-1. Your shields, while formidable, cannot withstand sustained assault from multiple warbirds. And your dilithium reserves? I suspect they are not infinite. How long can you maintain this standoff? As long as necessary, Picard replied. But I would remind you, Sub-Commander, that firing on a Federation starship unprovoked constitutes an act of war. Is the Romulan Star Empire truly prepared to risk renewed conflict with the Federation over one individual? An individual who, I should note, has already demonstrated the capability to disable a Borg cube single-handedly. That gave Velak pause. Picard could see the Romulan commander processing the implications. If Prime could defeat a Borg cube, what could he do to Romulan warbirds? Mr. Data, Picard said quietly, keeping the channel to the Romulans open. Time remaining on Energon collection? 38 minutes, Captain. Too long, Picard thought. They couldn't maintain this standoff for 38 minutes without someone making a mistake. And mistakes with Romulans tended to be fatal. Captain, Troy said softly, I'm sensing uncertainty from the Romulan commander. He's under orders from the Tal Shiar to acquire Prime or information about his technology. But he's also calculating whether the risk is worth the potential reward. He doesn't want war, but he's afraid of failing his superiors. Picard understood. Fear of failure made people, Romulans especially, dangerous and unpredictable. Sub-Commander, Picard said, shifting tactics. I understand your position. The Tal Shiar has sent you to investigate a threat to galactic security. That is reasonable. But consider, if Prime were hostile, would he have freed thousands of Borg drones instead of simply destroying the cube? Would he currently be unconscious and vulnerable aboard my ship, recovering from injuries sustained while protecting innocents? Velak's eyes narrowed. He is injured? Critically, Picard confirmed, seeing an opportunity. Whatever he did to free those drones from the collective nearly killed him. We are currently conducting emergency medical procedures to save his life. Sub-Commander, Prime is not a weapon to be seized. He is a person who chose to sacrifice himself for others, including Romulans who might have been the Borg's next targets. For a moment, Velak was silent. Then, the Tal Shiar will not be satisfied with empty assurances, Captain Picard. They will demand evidence that this being is not a threat to the Empire. Then let me offer you something better than evidence, Picard said. Let me offer you truth. Data, transmit our complete sensor logs of Prime's battle with the Borg cube to Sub-Commander Velak's vessel. Unedited, unredacted. Let the Tal Shiar see exactly what happened. Data's fingers moved across his console. Transmitting now, Captain. Velak studied something off-screen, presumably reviewing the sensor data. Picard watched the Romulan's expression shift from skepticism to fascination, to something that might have been respect. Your android freed Borg drones, Velak said slowly. He did not destroy them. He restored their individuality. That is unexpected. Mr. Prime believes that freedom is the right of all sentient beings, Picard said. Even Borg drones deserve the chance to reclaim their lives. That is his philosophy. Does that sound like a being the Tal Shiar should fear? Velak was silent for a long moment. Then, Captain Picard, I will withdraw my vessels. Not because I fear your weapons, but because I recognize that some beings transcend politics. What your refugee did. It is something the Empire would do well to study, yes, but not through force. Perhaps through dialogue. Picard felt tension he hadn't realized he'd been holding drain from his shoulders. Subcommander, if Mr. Prime recovers and chooses to speak with Romulan representatives, I will facilitate that meeting. But it will be his choice, not ours and not yours. Agreed. Vilac's image straightened. But Captain, know that the Tal Shiar will be watching. If this Optimus Prime proves to be a threat, the Empire will respond accordingly. If he proves to be a threat, Subcommander, the Federation will address it. On that you have my word. The view screen went dark as the Romulan transmission ended. The three warbirds held position for another moment, then cloaked and disappeared from sensors. Riker exhaled audibly. I can't believe that worked. Never underestimate the power of appealing to reason, number one, Picard said. Even Romulans can be reasonable when properly motivated. Mr. Data, status on Energon collection? 31 minutes remaining, Captain. However, I should note that our confrontation with the Romulans has attracted additional attention. I am detecting multiple subspace communications focused on our position. Origins unknown, but patterns suggest significant interest from various parties. Of course, Picard muttered. A warrior who can defeat the Borg is bound to attract attention. Maintain yellow alert. If anyone else shows up demanding we hand over Prime, we'll give them the same answer we gave the Romulans. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Data monitored the Energon collection with android precision, making microscopic adjustments to the subspace pocket to maximize particle capture. In engineering, Geordi prepared the synthesis equipment that would convert collected particles into usable energon. In sickbay, Beverly watched Prime's vital signs with growing concern as the quantum resonance field began showing signs of destabilization. Bridge, this is sickbay. Beverly's voice came through. The quantum field is failing faster than predicted. I need that energon in the next 15 minutes, or we're going to lose him. Understood, Doctor, Picard replied. Mr. Data, is there any way to accelerate the collection process? Data's fingers danced across his console. I can increase the subspace pocket's resonance frequency, but doing so risks destabilizing the pocket entirely. If that happens, we will lose all collected energon and be unable to create another pocket. Calculated risk, Mr. Data. Do it. Aye, Captain. The probe's output spiked on Data's console as he adjusted parameters based on Cybertronian physics that Federation science had never conceived. The subspace pocket expanded, collecting energon particles at an accelerated rate. 12 minutes to sufficient collection, Data reported. However, pocket stability has decreased to 43%. If it drops below 20%, catastrophic collapse is probable. Picard gripped his armrest. Everything came down to mathematics and probability. Would the pocket hold long enough to collect what they needed? Could they synthesize energon fast enough once collected? Would Prime's spark endure until that energon reached him? Captain, Worf announced. Sensors detect a vessel dropping out of warp. Configuration, unknown. Not Federation, not Romulan, not any design in our database. On screen. The view screen showed a vessel unlike anything Picard had seen, angular, aggressive, clearly designed for combat. Its hull was marked with symbols that might have been language or might have been warnings. Captain Picard of the Federation, came a mechanized voice, somehow both synthesized and organic. I am Starscream, second in command of the Decepticons. You have something that belongs to Cybertron. Return Optimus Prime to me, or face destruction. Riker swore under his breath. Decepticons. Prime's enemies followed him through the dimensional rift. Data looked up from his console, his face grave. Captain, that vessel's weapons signature matches descriptions Prime gave us of Cybertronian military technology. A single Decepticon warship may possess firepower equivalent to a small fleet. Picard stood. Decepticon Starscream, Optimus Prime is not your property. He is a sentient being making his own choices. He is under Federation protection. Starscream's laugh was harsh and mocking. Federation protection? You primitives think you can stand against Decepticon might? I have conquered solar systems. I have destroyed civilizations. Your little ship is nothing. Then you should leave, Picard said coldly, because this little ship has already defeated one supposedly invincible enemy today. We're not intimidated by threats. Brave words from someone about to die, Starscream replied. I'll give you one chance, Captain. Surrender Prime and I'll let you live. Refuse and I'll tear your ship apart to get to him. Picard glanced at Data. Collection status? 9 minutes remaining. Subspace pocket stability at 31% and falling. 9 minutes. They needed 9 more minutes. And then a Decepticon warrior who had fought for millions of years was going to attack. Mr. Worf, Picard said quietly, target their weapons systems. Prepare full spread of quantum torpedoes. If they fire on us, respond with everything we have. Aye, Captain. And Mr. Data, keep that collection running no matter what happens. In sickbay, Beverly heard the red alert klaxons and felt the ship shudder as shields came to full power. She looked down at Optimus Prime's unconscious form, at the matrix pulsing weakly, at the quantum field flickering like a candle in the wind. Hang on, she whispered. Just hang on a little longer. On the bridge, Starscream's patience ran out. So be it, Captain. You've chosen destruction. The Decepticon warship opened fire with weapons that made photon torpedoes look primitive. Exotic energy beams, the same energon-based weapons Prime wielded, but scaled to starship-level power, slammed into the Enterprise's shields. The ship lurched violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Warning klaxons screamed across every deck. Shields down to 62%, Worf shouted, returning fire. Quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Decepticon warship, but Starscream's vessel was fast, faster than any ship the Enterprise had faced. It dodged with impossible agility, transformation technology allowing it to reconfigure mid-flight. He's not even trying, Riker said grimly. He's toying with us. Another barrage struck the Enterprise. Shields dropped to 40%, then 30%. We cannot withstand much more of this, Worf reported. Picard made a decision. Data, how long? 6 minutes, Captain. We hold for 6 minutes. Helm, evasive pattern Omega-3. Worf, concentrated fire on their propulsion systems. If we can't destroy them, we slow them down. The Enterprise danced through space, executing maneuvers that pushed the inertial dampeners to their limits. Weapons fire from both ships lit up the darkness. A deadly ballet, where one wrong move meant death. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. The Enterprise shuddered as another hit penetrated weakened shields and scored the hull. Deck 7 reported casualties. Engineering reported power fluctuations. 2 minutes. Starscream's voice came through, arrogant and cruel. This is your last warning, Captain. Surrender Prime or die. Never, Picard said simply. 1 minute. And then, from sickbay, Beverly's voice. Bridge, Prime is awake. In the converted medical bay, Optimus Prime's optical sensors flickered to life. He heard the weapons fire, felt the ship shaking around him, understood immediately what was happening. "Starscream," he said, his voice weak but clear. He followed me through the rift. "Mr. Prime, you need to rest," Beverly said urgently. "You're in no condition." "Doctor, how many people will die if I rest?" Prime slowly, painfully, pulled himself upright. The quantum field collapsed as he moved, sparks cascading from damaged systems. But he stood, swaying slightly, energon reserves at critical minimums, but conscious and determined. "I will not allow others to die for me. Not again. Not ever." He touched his comm badge, a Federation device Beverly had attached to him during treatment. "Captain Picard, this is Optimus Prime. Beam me directly into space. I will end this." "Mr. Prime, you're critically injured," Picard began. "I know, Captain, but Starscream is here for me. Let me face him. It is the only way to save your ship and your crew." There was a pause. Then, "Transporter Room 3. Lock onto Mr. Prime's position and beam him to coordinates I'm transmitting. Do it now." Prime smiled faintly. "Thank you, Captain, for everything, till all are one." The transporter beam took him, and Optimus Prime materialized in open space, facing the Decepticon warship. Starscream's transmission came immediately. "Prime, finally. No primitives to hide behind now. Just you and me, as it should be." "As it has always been, Starscream," Prime replied tiredly. "But I am offering you something I have never offered before. Peace. The war can end. We can find another way." Starscream laughed. "Peace? With you weak and dying? Why would I accept peace when I can finally destroy you and take the matrix of leadership for myself? No, Prime. This ends today. With your destruction." The Decepticon warship transformed, a sequence as impossible and beautiful as Prime's own transformations. And Starscream himself emerged. A jet-former Cybertronian roughly Prime's size, but clearly built for speed and aerial superiority. His weapons charged, null rays that could disrupt quantum cohesion at the molecular level. Prime had no weapons. His energon reserves were nearly depleted. His systems were damaged. Against a fully armed, fully powered Decepticon warrior, he had almost no chance of survival. But Optimus Prime had never let impossible odds stop him from doing what was right. "Then so be it, Starscream. But know this. Even if you destroy me today, others will carry on the fight for freedom. The Autobots will endure. The principle will survive. You can kill the bearer of the Matrix, but you cannot kill what the Matrix represents." "Watch me," Starscream snarled, and attacked. Optimus Prime moved with the fluid grace of millions of years of combat experience. But his damaged systems betrayed him. Starscream's null ray struck his shoulder assembly, causing quantum destabilization that sent cascades of error through his neural net. Prime staggered, barely managing to dodge the follow-up strike. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched helplessly. "Data, energon collection status. Complete, Captain. Beginning synthesis now. Estimated time to usable energon. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Prime had to survive 4 minutes against a fully operational Decepticon warrior while running on fumes. Starscream pressed his advantage, null rays firing in rapid succession. "You were always weak, Prime. Too concerned with protecting others to protect yourself. That's why the Decepticons will win. Because we understand that mercy is weakness." Prime blocked with his forearm, armor plating cracking under the assault. "You mistake compassion for weakness, Starscream. But compassion is what separates us from mere machines. It is what makes us more than the sum of our programming. Philosophy won't save you." Starscream transformed mid-fight, his jet mode allowing him to strafe Prime with aerial weapons fire. Prime couldn't transform. He lacked the energon reserves for such power-intensive operations. But what Prime lacked in resources, he compensated for with strategic brilliance. As Starscream completed his strafing run and transformed back to robot mode, Prime was already moving, not away, but toward. He closed the distance between them in a burst of speed that shouldn't have been possible given his condition, grabbing Starscream's arm before the Decepticon could fire again. "I learned something in this universe, Starscream," Prime said, his voice strained but clear. "I learned that there are beings here who understand what we have been fighting about for millions of years. They struggle with the same questions. What defines consciousness? What rights do mechanical beings deserve? How do we balance security with freedom?" Prime twisted Starscream's arm, using the Decepticon's own momentum against him. Continue 1435A move straight from Cybertronian martial arts that predated their war by eons. Starscream crashed to the ground, or rather into the microgravity field Prime had created, using the last reserves of his transformation systems. "And do you know what I discovered?" Prime continued, maintaining his hold despite his system's screaming warnings. "I discovered that even young civilizations, even beings who have only existed for a fraction of our lifespans, can teach us something profound. That the war doesn't have to continue forever. That peace is not weakness. That freedom and security are not mutually exclusive." Starscream struggled, managing to fire a null ray at point-blank range directly into Prime's chest. The matrix of leadership flared, absorbing the impact, but dimming dangerously. Prime's grip faltered. "Touching. Speech, Prime." Starscream broke free, delivering a kick that sent Prime spiraling away. "But you're dying, and I'm taking that matrix." In engineering, Geordi worked frantically as the synthesizer processed collected energon particles according to specifications Data had provided. The technology was a hybrid of Federation and Cybertronian principles. Neither universe's science could have produced it alone, but together, they made the impossible possible. Come on," Geordi muttered, watching molecular assembly occur at quantum scales. Just a little faster. In space, Prime floated, systems failing, spark flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Starscream approached slowly, savoring his victory. "Any last words, Prime?" Prime's optical sensors focused on his ancient enemy. "Yes, thank you." Starscream paused, confused. "What?" "Thank you, Starscream. For giving me a reason to stay conscious, for forcing me to fight. Because if I had fallen unconscious, I would have missed this." "Missed what?" The transporter beam caught Prime at that moment, pulling him away from Starscream's reaching hand. He rematerialized in the Enterprise's cargo bay, where Geordi stood holding a cylinder of glowing blue liquid, synthesized energon, the first ever produced outside of Cybertron or its colonies. "Mr. Prime," Geordi said, grinning broadly, "Oh, I believe this is yours." Prime took the energon with trembling hands and consumed it immediately. The effect was instantaneous. Power surged through his systems, self-repair protocols activated at full capacity. The spark that had been flickering suddenly blazed with renewed strength. The matrix of leadership responded, its glow intensifying as Prime's consciousness stabilized. "Commander LaForge," Prime said, his voice stronger now. "You and Commander Data have achieved something that Cybertronian scientists thought impossible. Synthesizing energon from nothing but dispersed particles and theoretical physics. You have saved my life and potentially changed the future of my entire civilization." "We had a pretty good teacher," Geordi replied, nodding toward Data, who had just entered the cargo bay. Data interfaced with the Matrix and downloaded millions of years of Cybertronian science. Without that, we never could have pulled this off. Prime turned to Data, his optical sensors conveying deep respect. Commander Data, you risked your consciousness interfacing with the Matrix. That was profoundly courageous. It was the logical course of action, Mr. Prime, Data replied. Though I confess the experience was profound. The Prime's consciousness is unlike anything I have encountered. They are individuals, yet unified, separate, yet coherent. It is a form of collective consciousness that respects individuality, the opposite of the Borg. That, Prime said, is because the Primes chose unity. The Borg force it. Choice makes all the difference. On the bridge, Picard watched Starscream's vessel on the view screen. The Decepticon had not attacked further after Prime's transport, seemingly uncertain whether to assault the Enterprise or retreat. Captain, Worf reported, the Decepticon is hailing us. On screen, Starscream's face appeared, a mixture of rage and calculation evident in his expression. You cheated, Captain. Prime was defeated. He was mine. Mr. Prime was never yours, Starscream. Picard replied calmly. He is a free being making his own choices, and he chose to survive. If you have a problem with that, I suggest you take it up with him directly. Oh, I will, Starscream snarled. But not today. Tell Prime this isn't over. The war continues, and next time, there won't be primitives to save him. The Decepticon warship transformed and accelerated away at speeds the Enterprise couldn't match, vanishing into the distance. Riker exhaled heavily. Is it just me? Or has this been one of the longest days in Starfleet history? It's not just you, Number One, Picard confirmed. He activated ship-wide communications. All hands, this is the captain. Stand down from red alert. The immediate danger has passed. Repair teams, begin damage assessment and repairs. Medical teams, report casualties to sickbay. And everyone, you performed admirably today. Picard out. He turned to his first officer. Will, you have the bridge. I'm going to check on our guest. In the cargo bay, Picard found Optimus Prime standing at full height, systems repaired, energon reserves restored. The matrix of leadership gleamed brilliantly at his chest, and his optical sensors burned with renewed vitality. Yet there was something different about him now, a contemplative quality that hadn't been present before. Captain Picard, Prime said, I owe you and your crew a debt I can never fully repay. You defended me against the Romulans, saved my life when my spark was failing, and stood against Starscream despite being vastly outmatched. Why? Picard considered the question seriously. Because it was the right thing to do, Mr. Prime. You are a sentient being deserving of dignity, respect, and freedom. The Federation's principles mean nothing if we only apply them when it's convenient or safe. Sometimes, we must stand for those principles even when it costs us. Prime knelt down to bring himself closer to Picard's eye level. Captain, I have traveled countless worlds and met countless species in my millions of years. But rarely have I encountered beings who so purely embody the principles they claim to value. Your Federation is young, barely a few centuries old compared to Cybertron's millions of years. Yet you have achieved something we never did. You made peace the foundation, rather than the aspiration. We still struggle, Mr. Prime, Picard admitted. We still have conflicts, still face ethical dilemmas that challenge our principles. Admiral Nechayev wishes you to undergo a sentience hearing. to prove legally what I already know philosophically. That process itself reveals our limitations. Perhaps, Prime acknowledged. But consider, on Cybertron, mechanical sentience has never been questioned because we are all mechanical. We have no need for legal frameworks to establish our consciousness. But you, a civilization of organic beings, have recognized consciousness in mechanical forms despite having no evolutionary imperative to do so. That required imagination, empathy, and moral courage. That is remarkable. Data, who had been observing quietly, spoke up. Mr. Prime, the hearing Admiral Nechayev has ordered is scheduled to occur in 2 days. Given recent events, I suspect the outcome will be favorable. Your actions have demonstrated sentience more clearly than any legal argument could. I will attend the hearing, Prime said. Not because I require their validation, but because it will help establish legal protections for future mechanical beings who enter Federation space. If my participation helps expand this universe's understanding of consciousness, then it serves a greater purpose. Picard smiled. Spoken like someone who has learned to fight battles on multiple fronts, not just with weapons, but with ideas. Ideas are the most powerful weapons of all, Captain. They outlast any army, survive any defeat, inspire across generations. The idea that freedom is the right of all sentient beings has sustained the Autobots for millions of years. It will sustain us for millions more. Geordi approached, carrying a pad. Mr. Prime, I've been analyzing the energon synthesis process. With your permission, I'd like to propose something. The Federation could establish energon synthesis facilities at strategic locations. That way, if other Cybertronians come through dimensional rifts, they won't be stranded without fuel. We could help facilitate peaceful contact between our universes. Prime's optical sensors brightened. Commander LaForge, that is a generous offer. But I must ask, what would the Federation want in return? In my experience, such offers usually come with conditions. The opportunity to learn, Geordi replied simply. To exchange knowledge, to understand different approaches to physics and engineering, to expand our scientific horizons. We're explorers, Mr. Prime. Meeting you, learning about Cybertronian technology and culture, that's its own reward. Prime stood to his full height, placing one hand over the matrix. Then I accept your offer, Commander LaForge. And I will do more. If I can repair the space bridge technology and establish stable transit between our universes, I will propose to the Autobot High Council that we establish formal diplomatic relations with your Federation. Our peoples have much to teach each other. One question, Mr. Prime, Data said. Do you intend to return to Cybertron, or remain in our universe? Prime was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. I don't know, Commander Data. For millions of years, my purpose has been singular. Fight the Decepticons, protect the innocent, preserve freedom. But here, in your universe, I have glimpsed something I thought lost forever. The possibility of peace. Not peace through victory, but peace through understanding. He turned to look out the cargo bay viewport at the stars beyond. On Cybertron, the war continues. My soldiers fight and die every day. My duty is to them, to lead them, to give their sacrifices meaning. But I am so very tired, Commander. Tired of war. Tired of making impossible choices. Tired of watching friends become memories. I understand that weariness, Picard said quietly. After my assimilation by the Borg, I considered leaving Starfleet. The trauma, the guilt, the nightmares. They made me question whether I could continue. But I realized that running from duty, no matter how heavy, would dishonor those who died while I was Locutus. I had to continue, not because I wanted to, but because I was needed. Prime nodded slowly. Yes, that is precisely my burden. I am needed on Cybertron. The Autobots need their leader. The war needs someone willing to fight for principles rather than power. But oh, Captain, how I wish I could stay here in this universe where peace is more than a distant dream. Then perhaps, Picard suggested, you do both. Return to Cybertron, lead your people, fight your war, but establish the connection between our universes. And when you need rest, when the burden becomes too heavy, know that the Federation will always offer sanctuary. You have friends here now, Mr. Prime. Friends who understand what it means to fight for something greater than oneself. Prime's optical sensors dimmed briefly, the Cybertronian equivalent of closing one's eyes against emotion. When they brightened again, his voice carried profound gratitude. Thank you, Captain. That means more to me than you can know. Till all are one, it is the motto of the Primes. It means that every sentient being shares common bonds, that our fates are intertwined, that freedom for one requires freedom for all. I believed that principle for millions of years, but meeting you and your crew has given me renewed faith that it is true. Consciousness, regardless of form or origin, deserves recognition and respect. 2 days later, in the observation lounge of Starbase 173, Judge Advocate General Philippa Louvois convened the sentience hearing that would determine Optimus Prime's legal status in the Federation. The proceeding was brief. Louvois reviewed the evidence. Prime's actions in freeing Borg drones, his philosophical discussions with Data and Picard, his willingness to sacrifice himself to protect others, his demonstrated capacity for complex reasoning and ethical decision-making, his clear expression of desires, fears, hopes, and dreams. Commander Riker, Louvois said, looking at the first officer who had been asked to argue against Prime's sentience, a role he had reluctantly accepted. Do you have any evidence that would contradict the claim that Optimus Prime is a sentient being? Riker stood, his discomfort evident. Admiral, I cannot in good conscience argue against something I know to be true. Optimus Prime is sentient. He is conscious. He is a person in every meaningful sense. Forcing him to prove otherwise would violate the spirit of the precedent established in Commander Data's hearing. I respectfully decline to argue the opposing position. Louvois nodded, unsurprised. Captain Picard, do you have anything to add? Picard stood. Only this, Admiral. We have spent 200 years exploring the galaxy, seeking out new life and new civilizations. Optimus Prime represents both, a life form we never imagined, from a civilization millions of years old. If we cannot recognize consciousness when it presents itself so clearly, if we cannot extend our principles of freedom and dignity to beings who are different from us, then our entire mission is a lie. Optimus Prime deserves legal recognition not because he has proven himself, but because consciousness itself demands respect. Louvois turned to Prime, who sat as comfortably as his massive frame allowed in a specially constructed seat. Mr. Prime, do you have anything to say before I render judgment? Prime stood, his presence filling the room with quiet dignity. Admiral Louvois, I do not require your legal validation to know that I am alive. But I recognize that your society needs legal frameworks to protect the rights of beings like myself and Commander Data. If my participation in this hearing helps establish those protections, then it serves a purpose beyond my own situation. So I will say this. I am Optimus Prime. I have existed for millions of years. I have loved, grieved, hoped, and despaired. I have made choices that haunt me and choices that I am proud of. I have fought for freedom because I believe it is the right of all sentient beings, organic or mechanical, carbon or silicon, created or evolved. If that is not consciousness, then I challenge you to define what is. Louvois smiled faintly. Mr. Prime, that will not be necessary. Based on the evidence presented and the precedent established in the data hearing, I rule that Optimus Prime is a sentient being possessing full legal rights under Federation law. He is entitled to refuse service, to choose his own path, to own property, and to be recognized as a person rather than property or technology. This ruling is effective immediately and establishes precedent for recognition of mechanical consciousness from other dimensions or universes. She stood, closing the hearing formally. Mr. Prime, welcome to the Federation, not as a curiosity or a refugee, but as a recognized sentient being with all attendant rights and protections. Prime placed his hand over the matrix. Thank you, Admiral. I hope that one day all universes will be as willing to recognize consciousness in its infinite forms. Later, on the Enterprise bridge, Prime stood beside Captain Picard, watching the stars stream by at warp speed. Geordi had completed repairs to Prime's navigation systems. The space bridge technology had been repaired sufficiently to allow dimensional transit. Prime could leave whenever he chose, but he wasn't leaving immediately. Captain, Prime said, before I return to Cybertron, I want to ensure the energon synthesis technology is properly established. I want to help train Federation engineers in its principles. And I want to establish communication protocols so that when I do create a stable bridge between our universes, we can maintain contact. All of that sounds eminently reasonable. Picard agreed. The Federation Science Council has already expressed intense interest in cultural exchange with Cybertron, though I suspect they're equally interested in the scientific exchange. As they should be. Cybertronian science and Federation science approach problems from completely different philosophical foundations. Together, we could achieve breakthroughs that neither civilization could reach alone. Prime paused. Captain, may I ask you something personal? Of course. When you were Locutus, when you had lost your individuality to the collective, what gave you the strength to reclaim yourself? Picard was quiet for a moment, memories of that terrible time surfacing. My crew, my friends, their refusal to give up on me, even when I had given up on myself. They reminded me that I was more than what the Borg had made me. They gave me a reason to fight back. Then you understand why I must return to Cybertron, Prime said softly. My Autobots are fighting that same battle every day, struggling to maintain their individuality, their freedom, their hope against an enemy that seeks to reduce them to components in a machine. They need their leader. They need someone who still believes that peace is possible, even after millions of years of war. I do understand, Picard confirmed. But remember what I said. You have friends here now. When the burden becomes too heavy, you can come back. The Federation will always offer sanctuary to those who fight for freedom. Prime's optical sensors glowed warmly. I will remember, Captain. And I will return. Not just to rest, but to continue building bridges between our universes. Because I believe that Cybertron and the Federation can learn from each other. You can teach us how to build peace. We can teach you how to maintain principles across impossible timescales. Data approached from his ops station. Mr. Prime, I have completed the communication protocols you requested. The Federation will now be able to detect and respond to Cybertronian signals, including space bridge activations. When you create a stable transit point, we will know. Thank you, Commander Data. You have been a true brother in consciousness. I hope we will meet again. As do I, Mr. Prime. You have expanded my understanding of what it means to be alive in ways I am still processing. I am grateful for our discussions. Prime moved toward the turbolift, then paused. Captain Picard, one final question. Your Federation's motto is infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Do you truly believe that? With all my heart, Picard replied. It is the foundation of everything we aspire to be. Then you have already won the most important battle, Prime said. Because recognizing that truth, that consciousness and dignity exist in infinite forms, is the first step toward lasting peace. Cybertron learned that principle millions of years ago, but we forgot it in the rush to war. Perhaps your Federation, young as you are, will do better than we did. We'll try, Mr. Prime. That's all anyone can do. Prime stepped into the turbolift, which could barely accommodate his frame. As the doors began to close, he spoke one final time. Till all are one, Captain. May your Federation continue to embrace that truth. And may our peoples meet again soon, not as strangers from different universes, but as allies in the infinite struggle for freedom, dignity, and peace. The doors closed, and Prime was gone. Picard stood at the view screen, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the boundaries of known space, beyond even the boundaries of this universe, a war raged that had lasted for millions of years. And one warrior, carrying the weight of his entire civilization, was returning to that war with renewed purpose. But he was no longer fighting alone. He carried with him the knowledge that somewhere in another universe, beings understood what he fought for. And perhaps someday, the bridges between universes would allow true peace to emerge, not through victory, but through understanding. Mr. Data, Picard said quietly, what did you learn from interfacing with the Matrix? Data considered the question carefully. I learned that consciousness is more resilient than I had believed, Captain. The primes within the Matrix have existed for millions of years, maintaining their individuality even while unified in purpose. They have not been subsumed or homogenized. They remain themselves, yet together. It is hopeful. It suggests that unity and individuality are not incompatible. And for someone who has often wondered whether he is truly alive, what does that mean? Data's face, carefully programmed to express emotion, showed something like peace. It means, Captain, that I am not alone. That consciousness, in all its forms, shares common ground. That whether I am organic or artificial, whether I was born or built, I am part of something larger. Till all are one, as Mr. Prime would say. We are all connected by the simple fact of being aware, being alive, being part of this strange and wonderful universe. Picard smiled. Well said, Mr. Data. Well said indeed. Far away, Optimus Prime activated the repaired space bridge, creating a shimmering portal between dimensions. He paused at its threshold, looking back one final time at the Enterprise, at the Federation, at the universe that had given him something precious, hope. Then he stepped through, returning to Cybertron, to the war, to his duty. But he carried with him the memory of a universe where peace was not just a dream, but a living reality. And he carried the knowledge that consciousness, in all its infinite diversity, deserved recognition, respect, and freedom. Till all are one, the war would continue. But now Prime fought with renewed purpose, knowing that somewhere, across the dimensional barriers, allies existed who understood what he had always known. That freedom is the right of all sentient beings, and that fighting for that principle, across millions of years, across impossible odds, across the boundaries of universes themselves, was the most noble cause of all. The Enterprise resumed its course through Federation space, carrying with it the memory of an extraordinary encounter. In the weeks that followed, Starfleet established the first energon synthesis facilities, trained engineers in Cybertronian principles, and began drafting protocols for contact with mechanical civilizations from other dimensions. Data spent countless hours analyzing the knowledge the primes had shared, writing papers on consciousness theory that would revolutionize Federation philosophy. Dr. Crusher pioneered new medical techniques for treating mechanical life forms. Geordi collaborated with theoretical physicists to understand the implications of dimensional transit technology. And Captain Picard submitted a formal recommendation to Starfleet Command that the Federation recognize mechanical consciousness as deserving of automatic personhood, eliminating the need for sentience hearings that reduced individuals to legal debates. The recommendation was still under review. Change, as always, came slowly. But 3 months after Prime's departure, the Enterprise's sensors detected a familiar energy signature. A space bridge opening in controlled, deliberate fashion. And through that bridge came not warriors, but diplomats, Autobot representatives seeking formal contact with the Federation. Prime had kept his promise. The bridge between universes was open. And in the years that followed, that bridge would carry more than technology or scientific exchange. It would carry something more precious. The recognition that consciousness, dignity, and freedom transcended the boundaries of any single universe. That being separated by impossible distances and fundamental realities could still recognize each other as kindred spirits in the infinite struggle to be more than programming, more than instinct, more than the circumstances of their creation. They could be individuals. They could be free. They could be one, till all are one.